Tādu pasākumu, kas saucās Roksvaigznes uznāciens, un mēs tagad noiesim vēlreiz no skatuves, un tad, kas varētu būt tāda Latvijā roksvaigzne, kas varētu būt atbraukusi uz 270 cilvēku tā kā koncertu? Kas? Latviešu kaut kāds. Mūzika, ok. Ir tādi 2 iedomājieties, kas atbraukuši mūzika, vadīt šo pasākumu, ja? Un mēs tagad aiziem noslēpjamies, un jūs sagatavoties ar kājām, ar plaukstām, ar svilpieniem, ja? Atbalstiet. Tātad, dāmas un kungi, sagaidiet ar aplausiem un ovācijām. Un lama žubule no Reizeknes. Kājām! Ok, paldies, bija ļoti labi. Tagad jāpaklinās. Labi, esiet sveicināti vēlreiz, varam tagad oficiāli sākt, uztraukums ir nedaudz pārgājis. Esiet sveicināti fórumā Ieviesi Latviju. Prieks jūs redzēt, es ceru, ka drīz būs aizpildīta visa zāle. Un, jā, vai jūs zināt, kāpēc jūs esat šeit atbraukuši? Jā, daži zin, daži nezin. Tad mūsu uzdevums ir izstāstīt, ka fórums notiks 3 dienas. Un fóruma mērķis ir īstumā vairāki. Fóruma mērķis ir veicināt jaunatnes jomā iesaistīto pušu sadarbību, lai attīstītu jaunatnes darbu, lai nodrošinātu pieredzes apmaiņu par atbalstu jaunatnes darbam dažādos mērogos reģionālā, nacionālā, Eiropas, kā arī uzsvērt jauniešu centru nozīmi jaunatnes darbā.
Jā. Un vēlreiz šīs konferences nosaukums ir atbalsts jaunatnes darbām Latvijas un Eiropas mērogā. Un šo konferenci organizē Jaunatnes Starptautiskā programma aģentūra sadarbībā ar biedrību Jaunatnes līderu koalīcija un biedrību Baltijas Reģionālais fonds Latvijas un Šveices sadarbības programmas ietvaros.
Aplausi organizētājiem! Jā, ļoti labi. Skatos, ka mums ir nedaudz jāpiestrādā pie dažām svarīgām lietām. Ja mēs tā ar Laumu parunājām, mēs sapratām, ka parasti fórumos, konferencēs ir ļoti svarīgas dažas lietas. Pirmā lieta ir aplausi. Ja, jo parasti cilvēki it kā saprot, kad ir jāsāk, bet nezin, kad ir jābeidz aplaudēt. Tāpēc tagad mēs jums parādīsim ļoti vienkāršu tādu metodi, kā zināt, kad jāaplaudē. Un mums ir tāds izgudrots aplausu metrs, kas nozīmē, tās ir manas rokas. Un, kad manas rokas ir šī kā tālu viens otrs, jūs atdodat ļoti skaļi, un tad, kad viņas ir ļoti tuvu, tad jūs aplaudējat ļoti klusi, un tad attiecīgi tur mainās tas temps. Jā, pamēģināsim. Jā, tātad uz šo tādu signālu mēs uztaisim pēdējo plaukšķi, un tad aplausi ir beigušies, ja? Ļoti labi. Vēl svarīgas lietas.
Jā, vēl viena svarīga lieta ir parādīt, kādu viedokli jūs kādam piekrītat. Un šis viedoklis ir tāds, ka jums ir jāapmāja galvu, bet no aizmuguras uz priekšu, ja? Mēs visi varam izmēģināt. Tātad, ja jūs kaut kam piekrītat, jūs darāt. Jā, bet tā kārtīgi, lai var redzēt, jūs tiešām piekrītat.
Uzmanīgi ar kaklu, tā.
Otra lieta, ja jūs kaut kam nepiekrītat, ir tieši pretēji no labās uz kreiso. Ja, no labās kreiso un vairākas reizes, vismaz 3 reizes, tā lai patiešām redzēt, ka nepiekrītat. Jā, nevajag tur metālu tēlu, matus pa gaisu, bet tā lai var redzēt. Un trešā lieta, ja jums nav viedoklis, tad drīkst nolaist acis uz leju, tad tas nozīmē, ka jums nav viedoklis. Jā. Un vēl trešā svarīgā lieta, ja šīs ja šīs konferences laikā jūs pasakat kādu joku, bet jums liekas, ka cilvēks nav sapratis jūsu joku, vai zināt, kāds ir signāls, un jūs rādat. Tātad, ja jūs pasakat joku un kāds nesaprot, tad jūs parādat šitā, ka tas bija domāts kā joks. Ja? Tad vismaz viņš zinās, ka viņam jāpasmējās, tas pieklājas pēc.
Jā, ļoti labi. Pirms mēs dodamies tālāk, šīs fórums mēs būsim kopā 3 dienas, un ir ļoti daudz cilvēku. Tāpēc mēs izdomājam, ka nekavējoties mēs metīsimies tādā aizraujošā atraktivitātē kā iepazīšanās. Tāpēc mums ir uzdevums jums šī brīdī pagriezties pa labi un pa kreisi un pateikt, kā jūs sauc, no kurienes jūs esat Un kas jūs var iepriecināt? Tagad pagriezieties, paspiediet roku ar blakus sēdētāju. Kā jūs sauc, no kurienes esat un kas jūs var iepriecināt? Kad tas ir izdarīts, pagriezieties arī uz aizmuguri un uz priekšu, tātad ar priekšā un aizmugurē sēdošajiem sasveicināties, paskatiet, kā jūs sauc. Brīnišķīgi, brīnišķīgi, patīkams troksnis zālē, ļoti labi. Ļoti labi. Drīkst pārtraukt, iepazīties šobrīd.
Varēs turpināt.
Jā.
Jā, nu tad tagad būs oficiālais brīdis, kad mēs ļoti oficiāli atklāsim šo konferenci ar pirmo viesi. So, in order to officially open the conference, we kindly invite representative of Swiss Confederation Embassy in the Republic of Latvia, Consular Deputy Head of Mission, Dominika Peter.
Aplausi, aplausi.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you. But I'm too short, so I must take this down. Thank you very much for inviting me to take part in the opening of this conference. As it was said, my name is Dominika Peter. I'm here for the Embassy of Switzerland in Riga. And the conference is situated within a big cooperation program, of which you see the nice poster over there. This conference is within a part of our program, but it's a very important part. Youth support, and it's one of the priorities of our program here in Latvia. We have 6 projects out of 11 that have something to do with youth support, protection. I'm just quickly telling you what the other ones are about. So one is school buses, which facilitates the way for young people to get to school, obviously. Then we have a fire safety project which targets also children's homes and education institutions. Then we have some smaller projects within working directly with NGOs which can be funded from a special grant, and also 2 projects having to do with education and research, also targeting younger people. Now, this one does a lot of smaller things which then later will be connected. The main thing is that here in Latvia we have already facilitated or created 17 youth centers all over the country. They're operational. 5 more will be opened in the course of the next year. We're organizing events, seminars. At the moment, about more than half of the seminars that are organized within the program have already taken place. Also, we're doing bigger events like this one, and we help in creating strategy papers and action plans and things like that. The target groups of all this big youth project is young people between 13 and 25, and people living in more disadvantaged areas, or maybe also peripheral areas away from the centres. Plus, and I think that would concern more of you here present, also personnel involved in working with young people and with groups of young people. And the overall objectives of the project are fairly obvious, but I'm still going to mention them. It's to provide perspectives for young people, both in the personal and in the professional fields. and to give them more opportunities to become socially active. And as I said before, also to create infrastructure, places, in that case, the youth centres I was talking about before. What is nice about this project is that it has also created new networks, new synergies. We have discovered that from various youth centres here in the country, people have started to make contact with each other, to exchange experiences, and to talk about maybe also mistakes that have happened, but also share their best practices. And also the training is actually bringing people together, because obviously training is much more effective if you do it in a group. So there you get networks, not between institutions, but also between persons. And because we're organizing events like this one, you also get international networking opportunities. I'm not sure how many countries we have in there, but it must be quite a few. We certainly have Latvia and the neighboring countries. We also have Switzerland represented. And in the end, in the 3 days, I hope that you will meet people from very many different countries. One last thing which I want to mention particularly is that within the program and the trainings, we also include non-formal education methods. And the project also aims at involving young people more in municipal work and voluntary work, which should help then to provide which are crucial for developing citizenship attitudes, as it says here in my paper. This is essential because you'll know that youth unemployment is a difficult problem in all over Europe, and so it's very important that we can provide other possibilities of getting involved in society. So I wish you good luck with your projects and with this conference, and I'm very pleased that now I can officially declare open this conference. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dominic, for nice words. Man liekas, mums ar Lāmu vajadzēs atkārtot uznācienu šīm gaismām, tas ir uzreiz piedot lielāku spēku. Labi, kā nākošo oficiālās uzrunas teicēju, aicināšu uz skatuves jaunatnes Starptautisko programmu aģentūras direktori Dainu Sproģi. Aplausi!
Labdien visiem klātesošiem! Šodien īpaši paldies gribu teikt Šveices konfederācijai par lielisko iespēju organizēt šo pasākumu, kas dod iespēju gan Latvijas, gan Eiropas valsts jaunas profesionāļiem tikties, apmainīties ar pieredzēm, izvirzīt jaunus mērķus savā profesionālajā darbā. Un īpaši paldies es gribu teikt Šveices konfederācijas vēstniecībā Latvijā pilnvarotajā lietvedī Dominikai Pīters par iespēju pagodināt mūs šeit ar savu klātbūtni šajā mums visiem, gan organizētājiem, gan dalībniekiem svarīgajā pasākumā. Un lielu paldies gribu pateikt tik vienu no jums, kas esat izbrīvējuši laiku būt šodien un turpmākās šīs 3 dienas šeit, lai piedalītos aktīvi konferences darbā. Darbu ar jauniešiem diez vai varētu saukt par vieglu, un tieši tādēļ ir prieks, ka jūs atradāt laiku savā visā sarežģītajā darba grafikā un esat šeit kopā ar mums ar Jaunas Starptautiskā programmu aģentūru, lai piedalītos konferencē un pievērstu īpašu uzmanību jaunas jomas jautājumiem, kur ir svarīgi gan aģentūrai, gan svarīgi jums, jūs ikdienas darbu īstenošanā. Katram jaunas darbiniekam ir patiešām svarīga loma jauniešu kā personības veidošanā. Jaunas darbiniekam ir svarīga loma jauniešu iedrošināšanā, palīdzot viņiem īstenot viņu sapņus, viņu idejas. Un, lai tā notiktu, ir ļoti būtiski, kad jūs spējat sadzirdēt to, ko jaunieši vai jaunietis vēlas jums pateikt, ka jūs spējat atbalstīt viņus viņiem nepieciešamajā brīdī, kad jūs līdzdarbojaties un izstrādājat tādu jaunatnes politiku, kas atbilst jauniešu vajadzībām. Un jūs esat tie, ka jūs spējat īstenot šo jauniešu vajadzībām, izstrādāt to jaunatnes politiku tajā vietā, kurā jūs atrodaties, savā pilsētā, savā pagastā, savā novadā. Jaunatnes jomā strādā cilvēku, nebaidīšos lietot visai stiprus vārdus. Cilvēki, kuri deg par savu darbu. Un tikai šādi cilvēki, kas deg par savu darbu, spēj darīt brīnumus. Sadarbība un labās prakses pārņemšana jaunas politikas jomā, tā ir ļoti būtiska un nepieciešama lieta, lai attīstītu jaunatnes darbu. Tāpēc šodien un turpmākās dienas atrodoties un piedaloties šajā konferencē, jums ir dot iespēja satikt kolēģus gan no citiem Latvijas novadiem, satikt kolēģus no citām valstīm un veicinot savstarpējo sadarbību un strādāt uz to, lai mēs attīstītu efektīvu jaunas politiku ne tikai šeit Latvijā, bet paskatītos jau nedaudz plašāk Eiropas kontekstā un piedalītos arī efektīvas jaunas politikas veidošanā, attīstīšanā, īstenošanā arī Eiropas līmenī. Konferences laikā aicinu ikvienu no jums aktīvi iesaistīties konferences darbā, diskusijās, dažādajās darba grupās un nebaidīties paust to, ko jūs domājat, paust savu viedokli, komentēt savu kolēģi teikto, piekrītot vai arī varbūt iespējams noraidot to, ko viņš saka, paust savus ierosinājumus, jo jūsu idejām patiešām ir ļoti liela nozīme, lai mēs varētu nākotnē izvirzīt saturīgus mērķus tādus, kā jau minēju, ir svarīgi gan politikas īstenotājiem, gan arī tiem, kam šī politika ir nepieciešama. Novēlu katram konferences dalībniekam būt radošam, uzmanīgi klausīties, aktīvi iesaistīties tajā darbā, kas tiks organizēts šeit. Novēlu katram konferences dalībniekiem aizraujošu, atklāsmu un iedvesmas pilnas dienas. Lai pēc konferences jums patiešām jūsos mutuļot enerģiju un jūs gribētu lietas darīt vēl labāk, nekā jūs esat darījuši līdz šim, un jūs lietas gribētu darīt vēl vairāk, nekā jūs esat darījuši līdz šim. Jo tikai veiksmīgs darbs, kopējs darbs un pareizo ideju un mērķu izvirzīšana tātad spēs nodrošināt to, ka mēs būsim spējīgi dzirdēt jauniešu, iesaistīt jauniešu un nodrošināt to, ka viņi ir aktīvi, atbildīgi gan par sevi, gan par saviem tuvākajiem un apkārt esošajiem cilvēkiem. Veiksmi darbā! Paldies!
Paldies Dainai par jaukajiem novēlējumiem, tad cerams, ka viss piepildīsies. Un tad kā nākamā aicinām cilvēku ar mazliet garu amata nosaukumu. Izglītības un zinātnes ministrijas politikas, iniciatīvu un attīstības departamenta direktora vietniece jaunatnes darbā Sanda Brunā.
Ir nepieciešama mūzika.
Tad vēlreiz aicinām uz nākamo runu Sandu Brunu.
Paldies, paldies. 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 Gribējām mainīt pasauli, mainīt laiku, skatienā būtu pat naktī gaišs, un kurš tam cits to.
Sveicināti konferences viesi dalībnieki, dear guests. Very welcome, we are very happy that you are here. Es vēlos pateikt lielu paldies un prieku par to, ka jūs esat šodien šeit atbraukuši un atnākuši, kāds, kuram ceļu mērogs ir bijis, bet patiesi prieks jūs katru vienu šodien šeit redzēt un sveikt. Jūs jau savā starpā es redzēju, kad arī iepazināties un tā tālāk, bet ja jūs neesat to pagūši, noteikti to izdarīsiet visu šīs dienas laikā. Un tas, ko es redzu, ka jūs arī paskatīsieties viens uz otru, jūs redzēsiet to, cik jūs katrs viens esat dažādi, ar dažādām pieredzēm, nāk no dažādām vietām, bet šodien mēs esam šeit, lai runātu par jautājumu, par Latvijas un par Latvijas jaunatnes darbu. Nu, lūk, tad pirms mēs virzamies uz priekšu, es vēlētos, lai jūs katrs viens sev uzdodat jautājumu par to, kāpēc jūs esat šeit. Un par to, ko tad jūs katrs esat gatavs dot, pavisam godīgi. Nu, lūk, tad par jaunatnes darbu lielo nozīmi, es domāju, ka mēs katrs esam pārliecināti un svēti tam ticam. Un it īpaši skatoties nākotnē, šodienas izdarīties izvēlēs mēs dzīvosim rīt. Un tad šodienas jaunietis ir tas spoguls, uz kur tad mēs nākotnē arī skatīsimies. Nu, lūk, bet jaunatnes darbam ir vajadzīgi spēcīgi vēstneši. Spēcīgi vēstneši, kas spēj plašākai sabiedrībai ar savu piemēru apliecināt tā lielo nozīmi. Un tāpat arī mums ir nepieciešams domāt par mehānismu, kas tad apliecinātu jaunatnes darbu lielo kopējo lomu sabiedrības, valsts un arī Eiropas mēroga mērķu sasniegšanā. Šobrīd mēs esam tādā interesantā periodā, kad mēs esam jauno jaunatnes politikas pamatnostādni, vienkāršākā valodā sakot, stratēģijas priekšvakarā. Un ar šīs stratēģijas palīdzību mēs vēlamies pāršķirt jaunu vēstures lapu jaunatnes politikā, kurā mēs runāsim par jauniešiem kā par pozitīvo resursu avotu, kas spēj dot nozīmīgu ieguldījumu kopīgo mērķu sasniegšanā. Un tāpat arī Latvijas kā prezidējošās valsts Eiropas Savienības padomē jaunatnes jomā mēs runāsim un daudz pievērsīsim uzmanību tam, kā tad šī jaunatnes joma spēj sasniegt kopējos Eiropas arī mērķus. Attiecīgi, jūs noteikti jau pirms es turpināšu vai arī noslēgšu, jūs piefiksējāt nelielo dziesmu, kas ieskanējās, vai ne? Nu, lūk, un tad ir tā, ka vai jūs atpazināt, kas tā par dziesmu? Laikam ne. Kāds atpazina, kāds? Tas bija Gustavo un Kamielas dziesma Mainīt pasauli. Neliela performance. Nu, lūk, un līdzīgi kā šajā dziesmā, es pati sev arī kādreiz uzdevu jautājumu un mēģinu spēlēt ar pasauli tādu spēli, akmeņš ķērs papīrītis. Mēs visi zinām, kas tā ir par spēli, vai ne? Nu, lūk, un es spēlēju ar pasaules spēli un mēģināju saprast, kur tad šoreiz uzvarēs, jo man bija vēlme, patiešām dziļa vēlme apkārtējo pasauli mainīt, lai būtu gaiši tikpat kā dienā, tā arī naktī. Bet tad vienā brīdī es sapratu, ka, laiks iet uz priekšu, un es sapratu, ka jāsāk pašai patiesībā ir ar sevi. Un tikai tad arī mēs spējam mainīt apkārtējo pasauli. Es ticu un es esmu patiešām pārliecināta par to, ka mums katru vienu cītīgais darbs, kādam redzamāks, kādam neredzamāks, tieši ikdienas darbs jaunatnes jomā ir augsts vērtējums kopējo mērķu sasniegšanā. Un ne tikai pašvaldības līmenī, bet, kā jūs iepriekš arī minēju, tieši valsts mērogā. Un tieši šodien mums šeit ir tieši šodien šeit mums ir 2901 pozitīvo pārmaiņu iespējas. Tieši tik daudz šeit Latvijā ir mums jaunieši. Un es novēlu, lai no vārdu pilieniem, kas šodien būs daudz, mums veidotos tiešām pamatīgas darbu jūras, vārdi māca, bet mums visiem ir skaidrs, ka tieši piemēri ir tie, kas aizrauj, tāpēc es novēlu jums katram vienam būt kā izcilam piemēram, un lai tad jums šodien veicās. Paldies!
Aplausi! Paldies Sandai. Vienmēr prieks redzēt cilvēkus no ministrijas, kuri arī deg par savu darbu un par jauniešiem, kā izteicās Daina. Paldies arī par performanci, ļoti labi.
Dziesmu būs iespēja arī noklausīties vēlāk.
Jā, saņemsiet linku YouTube. Ok, mēs esam noslēguši šo oficiālo uzrunu daļu. Tas nozīmē, ka esam gatavi mesties darbā, bet pirms mēs sākam darbu, ir dažas praktiskas lietas, kas mums ir jāizstāsta, kas notiek paralēli. Un, ja jūs parakstījāties pie reģistrēšanās, tur bija par to, ka jūs piedalīsieties, varbūt, un tur varbūt bija arī kolona par audio video. Tas nozīmē, ja jūs parakstījāties, tad jūs esat apstiprinājuši, ka jūs varat tikt iekļauti filmā. Jo par šo te formu konferenci top filma. Tā kā, ja pie jums nāk cilvēks ar kameru un saka, vai es drīkstu jūs nofilmēt, tad ir tā svarīgā lieta, ko teica Laumjus. Jā, un atbildiet uz jautājumiem, smuki pasmaidiet, un tad jau redzēs, kas tajā filmā sanāks.
Bet ja pie jums neviens nepieiet un jūs ļoti joprojām gribat tikt filmā, jums ir jāmeklē meitene Linda sarkanā krekliņā. Un tad jūs varat teikt, ka jūs gribat tikt filmā.
Ja jūs nezināt, kur ir Linda sarkanā krekliņā, paprasiet kādam cilvēkam sarkanā krekliņā. Viens no brīvprātīgiem noteikti zinās, kur ir atrodama Linda. Labi, vēl viena svarīga lieta, protams, ir fotostūrītis, kas atrodas tieši pie izejas kreisajā pusē, kur ir salīmētas šīs te lāsītes. Tur jūs varat filmēties, bildēties dažādās pozās un dažādām grimasēm. Un ko ar šīm bildēm darīt? Man ir šī brīdī piemirsies e-pasts, nav pierakstīts nekas. Viņas, pateikšu vēlāk, var sūtīt meitenei uz e-pastu, arī, man liekas, Linda, kura pēc tam ir pilns visi brīvprātīgie Lindas. Kura pēc tam tiks apkopotas un tiks veidot kopēju konferences galeriju. Bet ko jūs vēl varat darīt ar šīm bildēm? Jūs varat viņas, protams, postot Facebookā un Twitterī. Un Twitterī ir šis te profils vai abolīts, vai sabačka, ievirzi. Un, kad jūs ievietojat bildi, tad izmantojat arī šo te mirkļu birku vai restēmu vai hashtagu, hashtags ievirzi. Un tagad es gribētu, lai jūs paņemiet savus gudros telefonus, man viņš nav ļoti gudrs, paņemiet savus klāstāmos Samsung, Sony, Nokia. Un ābolīšus arī, droši var paņemt. Un uztaisīsim kopīgu selfiju, lai varētu tā kā nobombardēt Twitteri un uzkarināt. Jā, mēs ar Laumu arī kopā, bet tā pagriešamies visiem. Tā paceļam telefonus gaisā, es vēroju, paceļam, vismaz pāris gribu redzēt. Jā, labi. Ok, un 1, 2, 3, selfies, hopā! Ļoti labi. Un šīs te bildes tātad liekam Twitterī, liekam Facebookā, hashtags restēm un mirkļu birka ievirzi. Un, uzkarināsim visu Twitterī ar nevaru uztaisīt selfiju.
Tikai neatļauties pārāk daudz ar selfijiem, nav jātaisa visu laiku.
Tiem, kam nav gudrie telefoni, var pieliekties klāt. Tiem, kam ir. Ok, lieliski. Selfiju flashmobs, ļoti labi. Vēl viena svarīga lieta ir, ja jums ir kādi materiāli par savu organizāciju, projektu, par jūsu darbību, to var droši nolikt resursu punktā, kas principā ir viss foyer. Ja jums ir šaubas par to, kur drīkst vai nedrīkst likt, arī pie info punkta, pie brīvprātīgiem drīkst griezties un pajautāt. Un arī tāpat foyer var atrast dažādus materiālus, noderīgus vairāk vai mazāk.
Un vēl divas svarīgas lietas, katram no jums gan ir šāda programma, vai ne? Tad var mazliet pavicināt, lai mēs redzam, ka ir, ļoti labi. Tajā programmā viss ir sarakstīts daudzums pareizi. Laika ziņā nekas nemainīsies, būs iespējams kādas mazliet saturiskās izmaiņas, bet par tām visām mēs arī ziņosim. Ēdienas ziņā nekādas izmaiņas nebūs.
Būs ēdienas.
Un vēl viena svarīga lieta, kad šeit tālāk būs vairākas prezentācijas un arī darba grupās būs vairāk materiāli, kas tiks prezentēti. Jums tas nav viss jāpāraksta vai jāpieraksta, jo visi tie materiāli pēc tam jums tiks nosūtīti uz e-pastiem. Ja? Tā kā tas būs tāds resursu folderīts, ko katrs no jums arī saņems.
Kopā ar YouTube linku uzdziest.
Jā, un tad tā nākamā sadaļa, kas būs apmēram 2 stundas līdz pusdienām, būs prezentācijas, lai vairāk ievedzītu mūsu jaunatnes darbā un jaunatnes politikā. Būs vairāk interesanti cilvēki, kas sniegs gan savu viedokli, gan savu redzējumu un atziņas. Un kā pirmo cilvēku mēs aicinām Lucille Prievu, Eiropas jaunatnes fórums, un kas prezentēs Eiropas jaunatnes politiku galvenos izaicinājumus 2014. līdz 2020. gadā. So Lucille, we are really kindly asking you to speak here.
Ar aplausiem sagaidām Lucille!
Hi everybody. Hi. Okay. Work. Yeah. So my name is Lucille Rieu, and I am representing the European Youth Forum, which is a platform that gathers European youth organizations and national youth councils across Europe, and they represent those organizations towards the European institutions. And it's based in Brussels. So I'm very happy to come here to present to you some elements of the EU cooperation in the youth field. So I'll try to be quite brief. And there is a workshop in the afternoon for some more exploring a bit more the cooperation framework. So to change your okay, so you can change. So the first question to ask actually is why should we have a cooperation at EU level in the youth field? Because youth is actually a national competence. It's not something that is the responsibility of the European Union, but it's the member states who have full responsibility of the policy. So why do we have a youth cooperation at EU level? And what kind of cooperation is actually possible? Because the fact that it's member states who are mainly responsible already stresses or points out to some weaknesses of a possible cooperation, because any cooperation that we will have at EU level will not be able to have a strong impact, because it's in the end up to the member states, so to countries, to decide whether they want to implement or not the policies and the decisions which are proposed at EU level. So what is possible actually is to make rather recommendations or proposals by the European institutions to member states. Yeah, and so what actually the added value of these recommendations, which are made regularly to member states? Well, it's very important at some point to have common ground among EU countries. So there was a lack of common vision, so they decided, I was not there yet, and they decided to have common objectives to be able to kind of work in similar direction. But in the end, it's really up to the member states to decide on how to implement and when to implement the measures. So what happens essentially is rather an exchange of good practices, getting to know what other countries are doing and how we could eventually implement it in our reality. Okay? Okay, so briefly, who are the actors of this framework for cooperation that exists? The first one is the European Commission. So in the European Commission, there are actually two bodies which are involved. The first one is the DGA Act, the Directorate General of Education and Culture. So there is a youth unit who deals with the youth issues, and they are mainly developing the kind of policy framework and making proposals for how the framework could look like. And then there's another body which is the EACA. I don't know if some of you know. It's the one who deals with the programs, for example, the Youth in Action program that we used to have before, and now the Erasmus+. So they are the one more operational, and they're also dealing with the youth. But the European Commission is not actually the one who really makes the decision. They are rather proposing policy development, but it's the Council of the European Union. So what is the Council of the European Union? It gathers representatives from member states. So in our case, what interests us is the Education, Youth, Culture and Sport Committee, which gather ministers of youth of the 28 member states of the European Union. And they are the ones who will adopt incentives and adopt measure, after discussion with the European Commission as well. They will adopt measure on different priorities in the youth field. It's going to be recommendations that are later on supposedly being translated or taken into account at national level. But again, there is no mandatory or binding aspect here. And another element to point out is actually the presidency of the European Union. They have their role. As you know, every 6 months there is a country of the European Union that takes the presidency. Soon it will be Latvia. Yeah? And each presidency also in the youth field defines some priorities. Yeah? And when they have priorities, for example, it can be priority, in 6 months we really want to work a bit more on youth work, so we'll maybe make a conference on this topic and we'll try to have outcome. Yeah, so they can have priorities and decide to have a bit more things going out of the discussion. Yeah. So before I explain what we have right now in terms of framework, I want to go back a bit to history, because I think it's important to understand what we have now. So actually before 2001 there was very little involvement of the European Union in terms of cooperation in the youth field. The only thing they were doing is to administrate the youth mobility program that you know very well, I'm sure. It's the Erasmus program that exists since 1988. And before that, apart from the mobility programs, there was no cooperation. And then it changed in around 2000, 2001. There was this white paper, a new impetus for youth. Actually, white paper is the name given to a political document to gather kind of actions and plans on a topic. So in our case, it's a youth field. So there was this idea that we lack coordination and we lack overview of what's going on in the youth field at EU level. So they made long consultation for several months. They consulted different stakeholders. So it was young people, youth organization, government, experts, youth workers, etc. So through surveys, through conference, and they wrote this white paper, which is a big document. It's actually very interesting to read, and it kind of reflects what's the situation and what's the priority of young people. And from this white paper that was adopted in 2001, the next year there was the first framework for cooperation in the youth field, so in 2002. It's the first time we had some kind of coordination. So what does this first framework say? It defines 4 main topics, 4 priorities, so which were participation, volunteering, information, and greater understanding and knowledge of youth. So the first 3 topics, as you see, really focus on the transition of young people into active citizenship, while the 4th topic, so better understanding and knowledge of youth, reflects the fact that we are lacking better understanding and real understanding of what the situation of young people, so it regards more to research, trying to have more information. Yeah? So those are the 4, so for each of the topics which are here, I haven't detailed it, but there are objectives. So again, it's ideal towards which each member state should work, but it's not binding. Yeah? I'm insisting on this because it's a big challenge, actually, of the cooperation in the youth field. What else this first framework on cooperation says? It also points out to 2 very important elements that I want to stress. The first one is what we call the open method of coordination. So what is actually a method to work together? It's lied on the voluntary basis, and it's basically defining common agreements, defining indicators on how and to measure that efforts have been made, but it's really again more on peer exchange and trying to each member state defining how they want to go towards this objective. So it defines common objective, but it's not. There's no punishment if any country doesn't go there. And this open method of coordination is still the method we are using in the youth field. So it's the method that is used in topics and in fields where the member state doesn't have full competence. And the other elements that is pointed out in this cooperation is that the youth element, the youth policy, should not be only dealt with the youth sector, but it should be also addressed in other policies. So the youth dimension should appear in other policies. It's what we call now, it's a very famous name, is cross-sectorial cooperation. So we don't want that youth only is dealt with by the youth sector, but it should also appear in employment, for example, in education, for example, because those are topics and fields in which young people also have a lot of concern. Okay. And then going back to what we have now, the first framework finished by 2009, and then we had a renewed framework for the cooperation 2010-2018, so it's our period right now. And they have agreed on actually the EU youth strategy, so a bit more detailed. And now we are working on this EU youth strategy since 2009. So those are the two objectives, general objective, main aim of the youth strategy, so to create equal opportunities for all young people in education and in the labor market. And second one, to promote the active citizenship, social inclusion and solidarity. So it's 9-year youth strategy. It works in a cycle of 3 years, so we have 3 cycles of 3 years, and each cycle has priorities, yeah? And they are decided by the council. So each 3 years you have different priorities that also, of course, refer to the main priorities which are in the strategy. And then this strategy also points out to 8 key priorities, which are the ones that you can see on the screen. You can note that they are much more wide than we had in the first framework. In the first framework it was really information, participation, volunteering, so more related to youth, and here we're really going to education, to youth and the world, inclusion, employment, so we are widening the kind of topics that where the youth strategy is acting, is involved. So for all of these 8 key priorities, we also have specific objectives, which I will not detail here because it would be too long. But so you have an idea of what are the main topics right now. Yeah, and yeah, just to conclude, I want to explain quickly how basically the youth strategy is implemented. There are some instruments, well, soft instruments, as you can see, which also reflect on the challenges that the youth strategy has. First one is the strategy should be evidence-based, so they have developed the European Knowledge Center on Youth Policy. I think that somebody will make a presentation from this center, so I will not insist. But basically it's about trying to provide more data and more information in the countries to base the policy on actual reality and actual needs. And the second element, that's in the next slide, it's a European dashboard of indicators. So here is the screenshot of the dashboard. Basically it's indicators which have been developed for each of the 8 key priorities that we saw before. So you can find here, it's online, it's very easy to find, and they have indicators that reflect in each country of the European Union what is the situation. So it's easier for you to develop the policies when you know what is the situation in education, what is the situation in early school leaving, what is the situation well, in employment, etc. The second element of implementation is this peer learning that we saw. So there are a couple of high-level meetings where you have representatives from different member states that can meet and exchange best practices to kind of learn from each other. And those are the topics, the main theme for this peer learning cooperation that you can see here. So it's very, it's happening, but I want to mention it because it's how there's a lot of learning from each other. And then very important instrument, you will have also a presentation on this, so I will not insist, because the structured dialogue. Structured dialogue is a tool in the EU youth strategy that aims at including young people into the shaping of the policy and of the priorities. So within the priorities of the EU youth strategy, each presidency defines, three-year presidency defines a priority, a topic, and they're asking basically young people to give their opinion and to give, more than their opinion, to give kind of policy recommendation on what should be done according to what they feel is needed right now in their reality. So it's a very good process. The problem we are facing with the structured dialogue is rather on the implementation and the follow-up of the recommendations which are being made. So it's very good, we are involving young people in defining what should be done, but then we realize that it's up to the member states in each country to decide whether they take or not those recommendations. It mainly happens that the recommendations are staying in the air. There are some that are implemented, but there are not enough follow-up. So this is something we are working on. And then another tool, of course, is the EU programs for the funding. I'm sure you know about this because it's very useful in each country. So you have Erasmus+, but not only, you have lifelong learning and the other programs also, not only in youth education, but can benefit young people. So this is it was just to support basically exchanges, to support programs and initiatives that also enhance cross-cooperation among different countries. And to finish, just explaining how all of this is monitored and how do we ensure that there is an impact of this EU youth strategy. It's actually very soft again. The only thing we have so far is the EU youth report, so every 3 years, going with the three-year cycle, so at the end of each cycle, there's an EU youth report, so there was one in 2012, there will be one in 2015, so next year. So now we'll be asking, because one of the part of the youth report is national youth report, and it's where each country basically explain how they have implemented the EU youth strategy in their country. And so right now, the youth councils, also the government, will be asked to explain what they have done. They receive a series of questions, and they have to explain what they have been doing. And it is a way to kind of have an overview at EU level what is being done. But as you see, it's up to the. Of course, we can believe that that countries really want to do something in the youth field, but it's up to the member state, and each one goes at different speed. And that was an overview of the EU youth cooperation framework. So I hope it gives a bit some hints, and then we'll go more in depth for those who join in the afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Aplausi. Jūs pamanīsiet prezentācijas, ka tēmas, kas tiek prezentētas, viņas ļoti sasaucās ar darba grupu tēmām, kurās jūs esat pierakstījušies. Un tas nav tā kā nejauši, tas tā ir tīši. Un ja jūs kādas prezentācijas laikā, kas ir par jūsu darba grupu, sajūt, ka ņudinām, gribas kaut ko tik pateikt, ka varbūt tā ir, tā nav, tas nozīmē, ka ir izvēlēta īstā darba grupa, un tas ir ļoti labi. Tā kā šī ir starptautiska konference ar dažādiem starptautiskiem viesiem, tad ik brīdi mēs pārsteigsim uz angļu valodu. So, for introducing our next guest, we will switch to English time to time. And as next representative and speaker, I will invite a lady with many responsibilities, but she's representing a Flemish Youth Council from all of them. And Stephanie Verachter, please welcome with applause.
So as was mentioned, my name is Stephanie, but not Stefania as in the program, but I like the name as well. My colleague Lucille has already covered a lot in her presentation, what I was going to represent, but I think I will elaborate more on the role of young people themselves in the youth strategy. Because as was said, my name is Stephanie, I am a member of the Flemish Youth Council. The Flemish Youth Council is one of the 3 councils that form together the National Youth Council of Belgium. A bit of history here. Belgium has a very special situation due to historical reasons. We have 3 official languages, and our national youth councils are created and organized by this language. So I present the Flemish Youth Council. It's in the north of Belgium. Furthermore, in my professional career, I'm a youth program specialist, and I develop local youth policies, national youth policies, European youth policies, and international youth policies. Currently, I'm working with UNESCO. And I have my own youth NGO that I established in Belgium to strengthen the role of young people with fewer opportunities and to empower their voice. So, the European Youth Strategy. I will give you a reason why a youth strategy, but again, Lucille has already covered this question, but I will strengthen it and I will empower it a bit more. I will give a very brief overview of the history. I will go in deep on the European Youth Strategy that is currently important for us, and I will tell a bit about the challenges in the future. So, why a youth strategy? Well, it's a bit cliché, I know, but the future of Europe belongs to young people. So the future of Europe, it will be us who will write history. It will be us that will be active and that will govern Europe in the future. So it is really important that we are already involved and that we already think critically and that there is a strategy where we can get opportunities and develop ourselves and get chances to already be aware of what is the challenges in Europe, because there's a lot of ongoing challenges. We all know what the crisis is doing to us. The Flemish Youth Council just had a budget cut of 20%, meaning we have €400,000 less to invest in young people for the next working year. There is climate change, there is the youth unemployment increasing, there is the social inequality, gender inequality, so enough challenges that we face today. So we need more opportunities and we need investment in youth. And luckily, the European institutions realized this, so they came up with a new strategy. Something very important is to involve youth in decision making. I'm a big fan of co-management. Some of you might already know, some of you might not know, but the Council of Europe has a co-management, meaning that each decision that they make on policy level, they consult young people. There is an advisory body on youth, and there is the officials of the governments who come together in a joint council to discuss and to decide on one back. I'm still there. I will talk a bit faster. Okay, so co-management. Keep it in mind because it's something that I will discuss in the afternoon in the working groups. The cross-sectoral approach will be also covered by another presentation. And more important, there was a need of better cooperation on European and national level. Because if you look at the past, you see that there was not a coordination yet, and due to the strategy, there is finally a coordinated, good strategy where all the member states can be active in and they can implement what is necessary for young people. So, challenges versus chances. Okay, so a brief overview of the past. There was in 1988, since 1988, there was youth programs on European level, but ad hoc. There was not a strategy. There's a lot of European institutions who are having their own programs and their own policies. And since 2001, they came up with the White Book. It was a good strategy with 3 pillars. But in 2009, there was a big evaluation of the White Book. Let me emphasize on that. There was a big hearing at the European Parliament where they included a lot of stakeholders. There were online consultations, national youth councils were involved, experts of the Youth in Action program were involved. And they came up with the fact that we need a long-term strategy and we need a better strategy because young people with fewer opportunities were not involved yet. Young people with a marginalized background were not being reached yet. So the Commission drafted a new EU strategy to invest and to empower. And the Council of Europe, not too fast, the Council of Europe made a framework to this. So today this is the European Youth Strategy, those 2 documents. Okay, yes. So very important is the computer a bit slow? I'm sorry. We should have a button. It's not going. Okay, very important is the 2 key overall objectives for us. Finally, they want to invest in us and they want to empower in us. So this is the overall objective of the whole strategy, which is quite important because providing more opportunities, especially in the field of education and job market, is not enough. We also need to be encouraged and empowered because if you provide opportunities, we need to get to the opportunities. We need to be informed of the opportunities. We need to be empowered to get and to do things. Okay, the next one. As Lucille also mentioned, this strategy proposed initiatives in 8 fields of action. I will also not mention them, but I will mention that the 4 fields of action that are prior, this has been stated by young people themselves and also by the policymakers, are education, employment, participation, and social inclusion. So if you look at what has been done already and where national governments are focusing on, it's mainly on those 4 priorities. They stick out. The other ones are also being tackled, but it's really important to keep in mind for the future. So keep it in your head. The next one. So the cross-sectoral approach was already being mentioned during the White Book, as Lucille also said. We cannot just look at the youth sector, we also need to look at the other sectors, the tourism sector, employment sector, education sector, because each decision that a policymaker makes has a direct impact on young people. So we want that the European Youth Strategy has an impact in all these sectors, because it's really important. So horizontal, you will always have the youth work development, but vertical, we really need the 8 fields of action in all these departments and sectors. But I will leave it up to the one who's giving the cross-sectoral approach. PowerPoint? Yes. So, according to me, the most important actors are, of course, the European Commission and the Council of Europe, who drafted the new framework. They are policy on high level, the top. The member states and the national governments are the ones responsible to implement the strategy. So, then you have the Minister of Youth. The Minister of Youth of Latvia is here, I've heard. So he is a very important person because he is the one who is mediating between the European policies and his own national policies. He is is the one who needs to take the responsibility to implement the European strategy. He is the one who needs to look at the national realities, what is necessary, what is going on, what are the challenges that my Latvian young people face, and he needs to take the directions of the European strategy to implement them in his own policy plan. Therefore, the youth department is also important, the administration to work together, and of course the National Youth Council. I've heard that many of you are from the Latvian National Youth Council here today. So we are the official advisory body, we represent the young people, so we need to take our space. We are the most important stakeholder here, because let's be honest, sometimes the minister and the youth department, they don't have the knowledge that we have, because we are the ones who are facing it. Then you also have the regional, the local youth councils and the youth services. So as you can see, it goes from top down and bottom up, but most important is the young people. The reason that you are here, that I see all these young faces, makes me happy, because there's not policymakers who are here today. Well, some of them are here today, but it is us that need to speak up, and sometimes we don't believe in the fact that we can be part of decision making, because I also studied European studies to understand all these complicated strategies, policies and institutions, but at the end of the day, we are really important. We are the main users of the strategy. So, something else which my colleague hasn't mentioned are the guiding principles. The Council of Europe stands for the rule of law and human rights and dignity. So the guiding principles that need to be taken into account when implementing the strategy is promote gender equality, combat all forms of discrimination, consider differences between young people, and provide for the participation of young people in policy making. Meaning that when we take the strategy, when we are going to implement it, we need to take these principles into account. It's like a check and balance to make sure that we think about these principles as well. Okay. And the next is on... Okay, I will not talk too much because this has also been covered. The working methods is the 3-year work cycle. The thematic priorities for each 3-year presidency. Maybe I can say that in 2010 Belgium had the presidency. I don't want to say that Belgium is a very important, takes a very important role, but I remember that we pushed to strengthen the role of the structured dialogue. I remember Belgium was taking the lead and saying it is very important for the trio to come together in 18 months, because if each presidency will choose a priority for 6 months, it's too short to evaluate. So the success of this lobbying and advocating resulted in the fact that there is now a presidency, so each time we have a structure of 18 months, where Latvia will take the lead, has already? You will take the lead now. Okay, and who knows what is the priority of Latvia? Wait, you're not informed yet. Yeah, of course.
And also the revised European strategy.
Okay, so the priorities where Latvia will focus on during its presidency is cross-sectoral work and the Agenda 2020. Yeah?
But if you speak about the structured dialogue, then it's youth empowerment in political participation. So this is for the structured dialogue.
Okay, so for the overall strategy, it is cross-sectoral approach, and the Agenda 2020, I will come back to it at the end for the challenges of the youth strategy, and for the structured dialogue, it is youth empowerment. Okay. In political participation, okay. Implementation instruments, it's a lot. The next one. So how is this being done? I want to emphasize on this again because there is many actors, as I said before, and there is many instruments, there is many ways to get the European youth strategy to become successful. But the most important is the cooperation with EU countries among each other. The structure on European level can only be successful if the member states work together and give the right input and do something on national level. Then the cross-sectoral approach is something very important. The structured dialogue is the biggest instrument for non-organized young people to be consulted. This is also something special to take into account because in a National Youth Council, it is most of the times organized young people who represent an organization. But this doesn't reflect the reality of society, because we know that young people with fewer chances are not going to a National Youth Council debating once a month at a big table on youth policy. This is too high for them. So the structured dialogue gives the opportunity and gives the responsibility to the national level to involve as much young people as possible. And you will see that in each country, other events and other consultation ways are being used to get the input of a structured dialogue. Then you have the EU Youth Report. It is coming up, 2015 now. We passed already 3 years. Again, this is something what's been decided on national level. I'm taking part of the EU Youth Report, and I'm the one who's saying, shouldn't we consider this actor? Shouldn't we consider this actor? Shouldn't we involve experts? Shouldn't we involve academics when we talk about Youth Report? So again, this is something what is being done on national level, and it depends. So therefore, peer learning is very important. As we speak now, many seminars are taking place of European countries sharing good practices and knowledges to see how are you doing this, how are you doing this, how is the youth policy going in your country. So the evidence-based youth policy, I will also leave it for what it is, and Erasmus Plus was tackled as well. The instrument and the funds are a very important tool and instrument to reach the goals of the youth strategy. So by this, we reach a framework of political cooperation, we increase visibility of youth, and we provide opportunities for ourselves. Okay. So this is the last slide, and I would like to share with you the future, because we still have some years coming up, right, until 2018. I think the most important thing now is the EU Youth Report 2015. If you go back home next week, think about how are you being involved in this report. Is the government taking you into account? Are you satisfied about what they write? Because to be honest, I'm sometimes critical about the report my own country is writing. The structured dialogue, which is being strengthened every 6 months, they evaluate, did we do a good job? Should we write other questionnaires? Should we have another steering committee and so on? Then the open method coordination was simplified, but again, this is something that is dynamic, so we need to strengthen it and we need to evaluate it. Then, where Latvia will focus on the the European Youth Strategy and the Agenda 2020. It's very important because we have the opportunity to push our priorities from the European Youth Strategy on a higher level and get it into the Europe Agenda 2020 of the Council of Europe. Probably from the Flemish government, we will push for employment and social inclusion. I'm looking at, well, it is, do you already have an idea of what you want to push in the Agenda 2020 of the youth strategies? Or?
We will give our comments on the youth report, and because it will be revised strategy, so we will say,
okay.
Yeah, look how good is the youth work, that it gives so much impact on the common strategy. And
okay.
This,
okay, so you'll give general inputs. From Flanders, we already discussed that we will give concrete suggestions that we want to push youth employment and social inclusion in this agenda. And then something, keep your agenda free for April, because Belgium will organize the second European Youth Work Convention. And this is, in the past, the first one was a very important convention where a lot of things changed on European level. So this is a very important moment for everybody to come together and to evaluate the youth strategy and to see what we need to do to go forward. And then on national level, this is our responsibility to convince the Minister of Youth to take measures that contribute to achieve the objectives. So in the work group in the afternoon, I will compare the Belgian situation with the Latvian one. So if you're interested in how Belgium is dealing with this, how Belgium is working together with the Minister of Youth and the Youth Department and the local youth councils and the National Youth Council, come and join me. So this is my last slide, and I would like to thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie, for such an empowering speech, and it really feels you are quite passionate about the topic. Un es arī ceru, ka tie cilvēki, kur ieradīsies uz darba grupu, būs tikpat entuziastiski par jaunatnes stratēģiju, tāpat kā arī Stefānija. Un tad kā nākamo cilvēku mēs aicinām mūsu vietējo Vili Brūveri, kurš ir struktūrētā dialoga Latvijas nacionālais facilitātors un arī labs cilvēks.
Paldies. Paldies, Lauma, tiešām. Yeah, thank you. Lauma just said that I'm a good person, so I'm very pleased to hear that. Es ļoti daudz domāju par to, kādā valodā man runāt, un tad es iedomājos, varbūt, ka es tomēr varu runāt latviski, un ka tie daži cilvēki, kas tā kā varbūt latviski nav viņu dzimtā valoda, tad mums tiek nodrošināts tulkojums. Bet patiesībā ir tā, ka es ļoti daudz nerunāšu. Un es gribu jums vairāk parādīt dažas lietas, jo par strukturēto dialogu jūs jau tā kā dzirdējāt, mazliet to ietvaru, bet ir tāds teiciens, kad labāk vienu reizi dzirdēt, Bet pareizāk sakot, labāk vienreiz redzēt, nekā 100 vai 1000 reizes dzirdēt. Un tad es arī jums patiesībā gribu ļoti vienkāršā veidā parādīt divus lieliskus video. Viens būs latviešu valodā, otrs būs angļu valodā, kas mazliet arī paskaidrot vairāk, kas tad ir strukturētais dialogs, kādēļ tas ir svarīgi, un patiesībā kāds mums visiem ar strukturēto dialogu ir sakars. Tādēļ es lūdzu nākamo slaidu, un tad mums arī būs video, un es ceru, ka tas... Bet man liekas, ka šī nav tā prezentācija. Tas ir nākamajā slaidā, ne tiešām. Jā, šī ir cita prezentācija. Ļoti interesanti. Bet vai mēs varbūt tehniski varam vienkārši pieslēgties manam datoram? Nē, bet man ir... Ok, labi. Tad mums ir, vai mēs varam vienu mazu enerģēzi uztaisīt, kamēr mēs to atrisinām. Paldies, Valter, izcili.
Mēs, jā. Halo. Aplaus Vilim, jā, part 1. Part 1. Tā kā jau mēs minējām, ka ir svarīgi aplaudēt, ir ļoti garlaicīgi 3 dienas visu laiku aplaudēt šitādi, skaļāk, klusāk, varbūt interesanti sākumā, bet tas tā. Tāpēc iemācīšu jums 4 dažādus aplausu veidus. Pirmais aplausu veids ir salūta aplausi. Salūta aplausi izstāst šādi. Atcim rokas. Lieliski. Tā kā advancētā versijā vēl var lēkāt. Nākošie aplausi ir angļu džentlmeņa aplausi, tādi no angļu lordi, kas aplaudē. Šeit svarīgākais ir seja tieši, ja? Tā kā attieksme. Nākošie aplausi ir varavīksnes aplausi. Varavīksnes aplausi sākās no labās puses. Noliekam rokas labajā pusē. Lieliski. Un tad vēl ir aplausi, kas nāk no Igaunijas, jo viņiem ir nacionālais čempionāts odu sišanā. Un odu sišanas aplausi ir šādi. Ok, ļoti labi, paldies, viss kārtībā?
Jā.
Jā, tad ar varavīksnes aplaudiem sagaidām Vīlijas Brūveris otrā daļa.
Paldies, Valter. Otrā daļa, otrais mēģinājums, un lūk, jā, bilde ir tieši tā pati, un tad mēs joprojām mēģinām noskatīties video. Tas, ko mums vajadzēs skaņu, vai mēs varam dabūt skaņu, mums būs skaņa, jā? Un tad slēdzam nākamo slaidu. Nu tad Salūta, aplausi. Varbūt, ka viņam nepieciešams iedrošinājums. Jā, dāmas un kungi, izskatās, ka mums ir viens vienīgs tehnisks problēmas, bet vai mēs varam vienkārši atvērt internetu un iet Latvijas jaunas padomas mājaslapā LJP.lv? www.ljp.lv. Jā.
Halo, tie sauc no lietas aplausi, ja, tur pat.
Mēs esam tikuši līdz video, tagad viņš būtu jābūt uz lielā ekrāna. Tas varbūt prasīs vēl kādas 30 minūtes. Jā, bravo! Yes. Nu tad skatāmies video. lūk, dāmas un kungi, tas bija tāds mazs ļoti, man liekas, kad cilvēkiem draudzīgs mēģinājums paskaidrot, kas ir strukturētais dialogs, un tā galvenā doma, kas ir šajā video parādīt, ka tas ir ikvienam, tas nav kaut kas ir kaut kādiem dažiem izredzētiem cilvēkiem, kur pēc tam brauc uz kaut kādām konferencēm, bet patiesībā tas, kas šobrīd notiks, līdz pat februārim notiks vietējās diskusijas, kur būs veseli 15 reģionālie vietējie pasākumi, un tajos jūs tiksiet ļoti laipni aicināti iesaistīties, piedalīties un faktiski iesaistīties šajā procesā, lai pēc tam jūsu viedokļi tiktu apkopoti un jau nogādāti tātad lielajā Eiropas konferencē, kas nākamajā gadā notiks Latvijā. Bet, jā, katrā ziņā es ļoti laipni aicinu arī tos, kas ir pierakstījušies strukturētā dialoga darba grupai, droši nāciet uz darba grupu, un tad es ceru, ka mēs varēsim arī apskatīties visas tās lietas, kas bija prezentācijā, bet varbūt es arī tā kā vairāk varbūt nemocīsim tehniku un nemēģināsim likt strādāt lietām, kas šajā metodā nestrādā. Video 1 no 2 mēs redzējām, un tad otrs video, lai paliek intrigai darba grupā. Tā kā paldies, un jā, atcerieties, ka strukturētais dialogs, tas ir kaut kas ir domāts katram no jums. Paldies!
Ok, aplaus arī Intam, jo viņš svīst vienkārši baigas ziedos, tur visi aiziet skaļi aplaus Intam, un pamāja roku, pamāja. Ļoti labi, jā. Acīm redzam arī tehnikai ir uztraukums, ne tikai mums ar Lāvu, tā kā viss kārtībā. Okay, and switch to English again, because our next speaker and presenter is Marius Ulozas, who represents Institute for Policy Research and Analysis. Applause also for Marius.
Hello people, labdien! Brailukai sasutes. I don't know which language to switch between time. It was so funny to listen to all of you speaking Latvian. Don't take it as offense. Like, it's a nice fun. And usually, I'm in quite an unusual role because usually I'm the clown on the stage, but since this job is taken, I will try to speak serious stuff. My focus today is on cross-sectoral cooperation. It was mentioned already in the morning. It's not easy to talk about policies after 2 inspirational speeches of empowered young ladies. So really, let's give again the round of applause to our active ladies here. So let's talk about cross-sectoral cooperation. It was mentioned already a few times. I will try to be simple, because if you are from institution working with youth, you have heard this topic, you have heard this term, but you don't know how to do it very often. If you are a normal young person, you would say, what the hell is this cross-sectoral cooperation and why I should care about it? So shortly, what we're going to cover in this presentation is why we're going to talk about cross-sectoral cooperation, why it's important to define a bit the term, and actually to navigate between different terms in this area, to see why actually we have to cooperate, what is the added value in principles, and what are the challenges. So again, coming back to the question, why in this important conference we are talking about cross-sectoral cooperation? First of all, if you look at any document of last couple of decades, any EU resolution or strategy, you see too many areas how you can strengthen any policy area. First of all, making policies evidence-based, which is involving researchers, involving data, involving young people as representatives of youth, in a way. And another aspect is cross-sectoral cooperation, because it is understood that alone, state or youth NGOs or any single institution cannot make a difference, cannot solve the problems because they are too big to cope with it. So cross-sectoral cooperation is one of the answers, and we have to learn to work in this cross-sectoral way. Another aspect why I talk about cross-sectoral cooperation, because me and my colleague Negus will be speaking, this guy waving his phone, he likes his phone, I like it too. So we did 3 years ago the analysis of cross-sectoral cooperation in the youth policy field on the national level. very long analysis, but also very long title. So we have defined a bit what is cross-sectoral cooperation in youth policy field, what are the main aspects related to youth policy and youth sector as such. And this year, together with State Youth Affairs Department in Lithuania, we have published the practical guide or manual on cross-sectoral cooperation in the youth policy field. So those of you who would like to know a bit more about the manual, how to use it, because it contains not only description of what is cross-sectoral cooperation, but also how to do it. And it contains quite a lot of methods and concrete hints and examples, how to start cooperation if you don't have one, how to strengthen already existing cooperation. So please come to my workshop and we can practice some of the methods there. Talking about terms, I mean, it's really synchronized, you see? I press the button, it changes, so perfect. In this area, sometimes as synonyms, we hear different topics, like different words. Cross-sectoral cooperation, interministerial cooperation, cross-institutional cooperation, integrated policy, or sometimes even co-management is used in the same debate. And I'm really curious how all these words were translated to Latvian. I'm really curious because some words just doesn't exist, or some understandings don't exist in other languages. So for example, in Lithuania we mainly use word tarpgynybinis bendradarbiavimas. Very good word. But it mainly covers two aspects. So one aspect is cooperation of different sectors. And when we say sector, it means government, it means NGO, it means business, media. So cooperation of all these sectors, but also in the collaborative and supportive way. But our working definition of cross-sectoral cooperation would be cooperation of specialists and representatives from different institutions and sectors in a concrete policy area, in our case, in youth policy area. So that means also that different state institutions, so as also Stephanie was saying, so it's not only Ministry of Youth or Ministry of Social Security and Labor in case of Lithuania, but also other ministries and their departments who are dealing some way with youth have to cooperate, but also involving youth representatives, youth workers, and other specialists in shaping youth policy, but also in the implementation of youth policy. Another important question, why the hell to cooperate? Of course, you would say, why not? But cooperation sounds easy, but then you have to make an effort to really cooperate. But we see that in general, it's not only to youth policy field, but it can be applied to other sectors. That first of all, you get much better overview of the situation or problem. Because ministry has their own understanding or scope of the work which they are doing. Youth organizations or NGOs have other approach. Youth workers or municipalities have, again, their own understanding or scope of the problems. But when you cooperate, you get a full picture. And then you understand, maybe let's do this or that. Another aspect is really avoiding double funding. What we learned so far that there will be no more money available for youth field as well, but also for other sectors. So that means we have to use the existing money in the best possible way, where we create more value. For example, we analyzed Georgian context recently with colleagues. So in their case, like Ministry of Youth is opening football pitches, the municipalities are making football pitches, and like everyone is doing the same. Maybe it's good for football, good for sports, but then it's not really practical because all other areas are not covered and not supported. So this cooperation helps to understand what is most important and where to put money and either putting them together or just avoiding the double funding. Also, it helps to avoid competing or opposing programs. It gives a better picture. Also, we see that cooperation is quite natural, because if you work in the same field, you're meeting in the same conferences, you're meeting in the same meetings, and then you understand that maybe we need to align our work, and you see that you have similar or common priorities. Also, again, it's financial reasons. Quite often it's really unavoidable because you have to work with these people to make real change, because either it's just the same topic or You functionally depend on each other. For example, national level youth policy, local level youth policy, or somebody's writing strategies, someone is implementing them, which is unavoidable. When we talk about cross-sectoral cooperation in the local level, on municipal level, very often you start cooperating because your territory of your work coincides. So quite natural that you have to work. And in Lithuanian and Latvian case, our municipalities are quite small. So we know each other, more or less. So why not to start working together, again, if our target group is similar, if our priorities are similar. Also, what we see that cooperation became a buzzword. It's good to cooperate, it's cool to cooperate. If you don't cooperate, you're a bad guy. So I mean, by definition, you have to cooperate these days. It's also this positive aspect. And it's good to have like 5 logos on the conference banner, not one, right? Again, it's linked a bit to this cooperation aspect. And when you look concretely in actually how do we cooperate and how to strengthen this cross-sectoral cooperation, there are 2 main forms of cross-sectoral cooperation. One is non-formal, which means you don't have agreements, you don't have contract, you don't have, memorandum of understanding, but it's more based on the relationship. You know each other, you have met each other, and you start cooperating on this, as I said, non-formal level, which means sharing information, maybe sometimes just having coffee together and discussing a bit. I really invite all of you to spend properly time during these days, during coffee, lunch, and afternoons and after parties, talk. Not only about politics and sports, but also about youth and what we can do together. Because it's really one of the power of all these meetings. Also sharing contacts, linking different institutions, different people to each other, because maybe they won't meet each other on their own, so just link them. And also, you can start looking for problem solutions together. But another type of cooperation, which is more linked to, let's say, institutions or bureaucrats, when it's based on agreement or document. What we see from reality, it's most productive when it's based on your interests, based on relationship, based on the will to cooperate. But when we're talking about institutions, you kind of need to have these agreements, because otherwise nothing is really happening. No paper, no work. So when we talk about these agreements and documents and forms of cooperation, of course you have heard many times working groups, commissions, committees, foundations. I would say also the national working groups, which are implementing structured dialogue, also one of the great ways of cooperating and involving representatives from different sectors. So there are different ways. And I would not say that there is one particular forum which suits all cases. You really need to see what institutions you're talking about, how often can you meet, how willing you are to meet, how natural for you is to meet and cooperate. Because only when you see that actually, next slide. Good. My works better than I say. So, because when we talk about the cross-sectoral cooperation, see the main aspects of it is really understanding that there is added value when you cooperate than you work alone. And if you don't have this understanding that you really gain something, or you really work better, or more enjoyable, or there is a bigger impact, then this cooperation will not happen. Another aspect, it's really important to coordinate your work or activities. So it's not only saying that, yes, we cooperate, but you have to start coordinating your work activities. And of course, it's very important to have agreed aims and objectives. So if you're actually working in the same direction, because you cannot work together in different directions, right? So in that case, it's really important to agree on objectives. And if you want to really implement the principle of cross-sectoral cooperation, it has to happen, this cooperation has to happen on all levels. During the planning phase, you have to then divide tasks and roles so everybody knows what they're doing and how they are contributing to this common work. There should be systematic approach to also see who are others in the field and how our efforts are aligned to work of others. You need to share information. It's not only sending after we did a conference and we press release, you see how well we did, but it's really informing at all stages, and of course it takes a lot of effort. That's why I'm saying it's not easy to cooperate, even if you're willing to cooperate, because it takes quite some time and energy. But also it helps to optimize resources. I will check now how good you are with Lithuanian. Is it very similar or not? It's just a short example how to recycle cross-sectoral cooperation. Or actually cycle again. So it all starts with initiation of this cooperation together. Then you together create, as we say, agenda, or how to say, agenda of cooperation, in what fields, in what areas. And then the first stage would be taking decisions together, or shared decision making, that okay, we know who's doing what. And next stage is linked to that, when you know what actually you will be doing and why, sharing responsibilities, that stage. Then it's quite important that it doesn't stop there with division of tasks. You also need to implement them and monitor implementation. And here very often we have problems when not only you monitor implementation of the work, but also somebody else kind of has a role to monitor and to see, are you doing stuff or are you just pretending to do stuff? And then it's important aspect, sharing results and kind of publicity, this outreach work. Again, here we tend, I remember my math teacher, she would go in the classroom and start making this exercise. And if she makes it correct, she say, you see, I made the exercise correct. And if it didn't go right, she would say, you see, you failed. So it's very difficult, it's very, how to say, difficult to share your not successes, because you try to hide them. But when you cooperate with others, it's more difficult to hide. But if you did something wrong, then it's also quite human, we tend to say, we did it well. So it's very important to learn to share equally successes and not so successes. And then you, of course, evaluate the impact. And almost the last slide, as I said, it's easy to say that we want to cooperate. It's more difficult to start cooperating because there are different obstacles. Sometimes you really don't have legal framework to cooperate. If there are no laws or no agendas binding you or kind of asking you to work together, sometimes it's difficult to explain your minister or your boss or your mayor why you're spending this time, why you're going to these conferences, why you're making these meetings with youth organizations, if it's not written in the legal framework. Another obstacle is sometimes we tend to raise our individual goals above the common or agreed goals. Of course, we have a lot of work beyond our cooperation agreements. Quite sometimes we lack understanding what does it mean, partnership, what does it mean, cooperation. Also, if there is no clear understanding or agreement, there is no clear document, what you need to do, there's a big room for manipulation. Or say, but it was not really agreed. Or yes, we will do it, but maybe next year. We don't have money now, somebody went on maternity leave, or, very easy to find excuses. Also, we see if it becomes bureaucratic cooperation, and cooperation for the sake of cooperation, if it doesn't include creativity, initiative, energy, it becomes just a kind of fake cooperation and just formal. Yes, we meet sometimes in these groups, but it doesn't really happen, doesn't really bring the result. If you ignore equal partnership, cooperation doesn't happen, and we will brainstorm a bit in our workshop how to kill the equal partnership. And if you don't have equal, or actually if you don't have coordinated partner, again it's very difficult to move on, because sometimes we speak, we're all here on the same level, we all share and understand our common goal, but if there's not someone who can pull or kick some asses, then cooperation can stop. Sometimes what we see, especially between ministries, some of them have really different working culture, working style, even words or buzzwords are different. So for them it's quite difficult to start working together, because maybe they're even having this morning coffee different times. So you even need to learn about this, how this other organization is working, to understand how you can work together well. Sometimes also this NGO sector and institutions have problems to cooperate because youth, they have energies somehow, ups and downs. Sometimes they're present, sometimes they're not present, and for institutions it creates a lot of stress. For NGOs, there's a lot of stress when you ask for something, when you get promises and it's not happening the next day. So you really need to understand each other, not to blame each other, but this understanding helps to cooperate better. And sometimes we see, especially on the municipal level, that party dependence is influencing or creating borders sometimes between different people in different institutions. So sometimes you have to just overstep these party differences. And the last slide is our contacts. If you would like to talk more about cross-sectoral cooperation, come to our workshop. If you'd like to see the practical guide on cross-sectoral cooperation, come there again. It's 178 pages. We'll have stuff to discuss. Good luck.
Thank you, Marius, for insights in cooperation and a little bit of Lithuanian language. I still find one word in Lithuanian is one of my most favorite words. It's vinīta pū. Vai jūs zināt, kā ir vinējs pūks lietuviešu valodā? Miki tiki pukas, jā. Nav precīzi, bet precīzāk var uzzināt arī vienmēr jūs. Jā. Tas, ko es arī personiski varu pateikt, ka Marijs ir tiešām ļoti interesants cilvēks, ar ko personiski aprunāties un arī sadarboties, tā kā droši var viņu izmantot šajās dienās. And as the next representative, we would like to ask Vera Strikler, Embassy of Switzerland to Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. Applaus.
I think it's pretty cold in here, isn't it? I'm Swiss, but still, I know. Well, I got asked today to tell you something about the Swiss experience and youth policy. It's not an easy topic, and I might introduce myself first so you understand why I choose the things I'm going to say. I have a Master in European Studies, and I'm working currently as an intern at the Swiss Embassy in Riga. So I'm not coming from the field of youth policy. So that's the reason why I will talk more about the structure in Switzerland, like how does youth policy really work. And I have my colleague here as well, she's going to talk later probably more about the projects, and we have a workshop, so you get to know the really cool and interesting project of Switzerland for young people as well. But I will start first with the youth policy in Switzerland as a structural thing. So youth policy in Switzerland is actually, it takes place on different levels. So there are many actors involved, there are many organizations, and the reason for that is that the whole Swiss policy is a federal organization, and it's quite complicated, so don't mind if you get confused afterwards. It's a confusing thing, because Swiss policy is confusing, actually, to say that. So let me start to give some facts about the Swiss policy in general. I don't know how much you already know, but I just get some few things through it. So the Swiss Confederation, that's the name for Switzerland as well. At the moment there are around 8 million people. It's growing constantly. So there you see half men and women as well for the age. They're currently, it's 2030, so but they're currently half to 0 and 30 years, and the other half is the older part. We have actually, it might be the same problem you do. We have, people are getting older, you see. At the moment the life expectancy is at 84 for women. The problem is that women don't get that many children anymore. So the people getting older, and we missing young people at the moment as well. So it will change, I guess, in a few years. Yeah, next, please. So the Swiss Confederation is a federal state, I said. That means that the state power is divided between the federal government, the cantons, and the municipalities. That means that the cantons and the municipalities in Switzerland have a wide-ranging power and their own source of incomes. Means that Switzerland is actually the policy is doing on the cantons and the municipalities. The government as a federal institution is doing just some task, but the main thing going on the level of cantons. So that's what they say, solving issues at the lowest possible level. That's what Switzerland tries to do. So that's Switzerland, I guess you know that, but just to see how the cantons are, there are 26 cantons in Switzerland, and you see the really dark one, there are more people living in it, and the really bright and white one, there are less people. That's because of the mountains. The mountains go through, there's no space for people, mostly no space. So, just to explain that there's 26 cantons, and they all have their own policy, and they have the power to decide the most things. So it's getting really complicated. Next one. So I guess you can click through now. I used to click by myself, so well, that's the confederation at all. You see again, we have cantons and municipalities, and sure the people. That's all policy going on. And then we have on the confederation, as I said, the confederation has just the power when the constitution says, an example is maybe defense. Defense is on the hand of the confederation. But the cantons have equal rights and a high degree of independence, means that everything else like education and taxes, what else has to be in the policy is on the hand, oh, not that far. I'm like going, can you go back? Maybe, yeah, thank you. Just keep here for a while. Yeah, so the cantons has the power to say what's on education, what's on youth policy, what else. The communes, the municipalities, is the smallest political units, and they have as well responsibilities, and that depends on the cantons. So if the cantons say, yeah, you can do education by yourself, they can do it. So the thing I'm going to tell you that is that it's not Switzerland making one policy, it's actually on 26 units of cantons doing their own policy. Means as well that it's getting really complicated to explain, because I can't say just that's the youth policy and we do that and that costs I don't know how much. So we have 26 different actors, and in this we have like 2,396 communes. They're doing their own thing as well. So we have a lot of actors, a lot of levels. That's for youth policy as well. And the next one, please. You see as well, there is another point just making really complicated the policy decisions in Switzerland is the language. We have 4 languages, German, French, Italian, and Romansh. Don't ask me how Romansh sounds. I have no idea. It's just a really small part in Switzerland, still speaking that. But every law thing, every federal act is in 4 languages translated. But the reason why I'm telling you that, it's not only the languages, it's actually cultural diversity in Switzerland. You might show the next picture. You see that's the language areas of Switzerland. The red one is German, the green one is French, the blue one is Italian, and there are some small orange parts. There's some red Romansh in it. So the thing I'm going to tell you that it's not only 26 cantons and over 2,000 of communes doing policy in Switzerland, it's also depending on the region of language. So the French people, or the French-speaking people in Switzerland might have another opinion than the German-speaking. That's from culture, as France has another opinion of German people. So we are Switzerland, we are one country, but we have different cultural aspects in it as well. So then we can start about youth policy, because it's on the same. Yes, please, next one. So who and where is doing youth policy? As you might guess why I told you about the Swiss policy system is youth policy is made on the federal level, on the cantons level, municipality level. It's made from the government, it's made from NGO, and it's made from people. So we have a lot of combination we can do with youth policy. But the main point is what is youth policy in Switzerland? Well, even if they're so widespread and so many different actors involved, there are three main pillars. There is actually everything going on with young people is based on these three pillars. There's like protection. So there's a protection, promotion, and participation. That means that you have protection for young people, means from danger, violence, protection from using of internet. So you have project in there. Then you have project who are going to promote young people, like making promotion of sports or education. And then you have project they help young people to participate, mostly on decision making and policy. And then you have the whole youth policy is actually divided between projects. So you have projects that care about that, people working with young people, and then you have all the federal laws and the communes and the cantons, they're saying they're giving money for projects. So the one hand is paying for it, and the other hand is doing, actually. But I guess that's in every country the same. So for who doing, like, is that youth policy? We actually divide like protection from violence and from danger. We're doing project for young people between 0 and 18. And we're doing promotion things for young people between 16 and 25. There's some exceptions. If you, till 30, if you work with young people, you get some promotion as well. So that just depends. Next one. So that I'm going to show you on the different levels shortly what we're doing, really short. It's pretty much confusing. I try to make it easy. But on the federal level, we have the national law, means the Swiss Constitution, the Swiss Civil Code, the Swiss Criminal Code. And then you have a special Child and Youth Promotion Act. That's actually pretty new, revised last year. And you have international acts of protection, for sure. These are, the national law is to help to support young people for protection or to, like all the projects. And it means as well for cooperation, like they help to cooperate, to help to give a law to all cantons that they are able to cooperate under each other. So, and on the federal level, you have different offices, lots of offices. You don't have to read it because they just want to show you that like so many offices take care about young people in their way. So, this is my next one. And you see the main office, they're important, is the Federal Social Insurance Office and the Federal Office of Sports. Because they, in my opinion, they're doing the most thing for young people. Yeah. They, on the Federal Social Insurance Office, they have two main programs at the moment going on for young people. That's youth and violence, and that's the protection, the media protection for minors. That's the federal programs. There are only two in Switzerland, but they're federal, so there's other things going in the cantons, as I told you before. And for the Federal Office of Sport, you have youth and sport, like the promotion of sport for young people. On the canton, on the municipal level, you have a lot of things going on, like they're actually the main actors for youth policy, because they have the right to act independently. So they financing youth project as well. They have a lot of cooperation with NGOs. The implementation of the federal project means that the two projects I mentioned before, they have the task to implement in their own cantons. So, and they do intercantonal cooperation. An example for youth policy on cantonal level is youth center, because that's not federal organized. So each canton can do an own youth center if they want. So they mostly pay for the project and some NGOs doing it. So we're coming to the NGO level. So as I told you, the NGO, there are various organizations. There's some umbrellas organization, foundation, clubs and programs and projects. They are actually on the NGO level, but they cooperate in all of Switzerland. So they cooperate with cantons, with municipalities, with federation. It just depends on the project. An example, there's two examples. That's one is the Swiss National Youth Council. so my colleague might speak a little bit more about that. And the other example is the umbrella organization for Swiss Youth Parliament. So, well, I'm going to say just 2 words more after that. First, we have sure some international cooperation. Means we are not a part of the European Union, as I might know, but we participate on some European Union project. So you see, we have a part in Youth in Action as well. We actually were a part of Erasmus, but we are not anymore because we have some voting in Switzerland. Well, that's a whole different story, but they kicked us out, actually, so we have a temporary solution at the moment. But it's for Swiss people, it's slightly different, but it's a solution to participate. And we have Bologna system for sure for the education. I will give you just, that was the policy system. I hope you just understand it a little bit. I give you some few examples what we're doing, like project in Switzerland. We have time after the workshop maybe to go deeper in that. I just want to mention it. So we have Youth Parliament in Switzerland. That is organized by cantons as well, and they have some financial support from federal. So there's 60 youth parliaments in Switzerland and Liechtenstein. So they, as you might know what they're doing, they support wishes and concern of young people. They try to involve young people in political decisions and to represent their opinions. They motivate young people for political participation and giving them a voice. So we have 60 in total. Well, that's clear. They're doing projects and they can do like demands or requests to the federal state if they want to have a change made. So they're giving a voice to young people. You see here a map of Switzerland, like the green, blue one is the cantons with young parliament, youth parliaments. You see, like, it's pretty much all over Switzerland. We have youth parliaments, the red ones are just coming up there. It's written in plano, so they get planned. So, yeah, there's just one part they don't have, but maybe in the future. There's an umbrella organization for Swiss Youth Parliament. They coordinate at the moment 33 out of the 60 youth parliaments. And they had just shortly last week, and it's just interesting input. They had a conference, how to make the Swiss youth policy more youthful, because that's actually at the moment a pretty interesting task, that they don't want to have just policy for young people, but with young people together. And in this conference, they gave the information about Easy Vote. They have a project called Easy Vote, means that young people over 18, they're allowed to vote. But sometimes they don't do it because they don't know how to do it, they don't receive all the information, they don't know exactly what they have to do, what they have to say, yes or no. So Easy Vote is a system that just simplify all these votings. And they want to give young people the opportunity to an easy access to voting. Then another example is the Swiss Youth Session. That's not the same as the Swiss Youth Parliaments. Swiss Youth Session is once in a year in the Parliament building. Under the sentence "Politicians doing your job" if you are doing theirs. This year's they 200 people are allowed to go. You can register, and then you talk like on 3 days to talk about really important national decisions in the Swiss Parliament, and it doesn't have to do anything with the Parliament, the Swiss Youth Parliament. That's an exceptional own project, and it's supported from the federal states. It's organized by the Swiss Youth Council. I know that you have some youth session as well in Latvia, so maybe you're going to inform me later what's the difference between Switzerland and Latvia. But I didn't really know about the Latvian youth session, so we can talk later about that. And then coming to my end, yeah, you can go further, I already said that. You can go further. Yeah, that's the youth session. I just mentioned it's this year in November, like next week, I guess. So that's the topics for the Swiss Youth Session. I just mentioned it that you might know what Swiss young people are talking about, what their concerns. So at the moment is strongly the relation between Switzerland and the European Union, job and family, racism, gender, youth unemployment and food waste. That's the main topic of the Swiss Youth Session, and I just want to show you what people are thinking in Switzerland, what is really important for young people, because they have the chance to vote before what they want to talk about. So, well, I'm actually on the end. That's just another example for making youth policy in Switzerland is that we have a dual education system, and it helps us to keep like the young youth unemployment quote really, really low. We have 3% of unemployment in Switzerland at the moment of young people, so it's pretty low compared to the European Union, and that's actually based on the dual education system. That's a reason for this low youth unemployment, but we can talk later about in the workshop because that's another big thing I don't want to talk about here. So I hope you get a small impression how complicated is Switzerland and how youth policy is actually implemented in each part, in each level, and how many actors are involved. I hope you have the chance afterwards to talk more deeply about the single project, about what the NGOs are doing, because I think that's the most interesting part, but my task was today to give you a technical introduction, so I hope you get a little thing out of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eva. Very short introduction, very complicated topic.
Swiss experience.
Swiss experience. Jā, kā Vera jau teica, šeit ir diezgan pavēs, un kā teica Marijus, ka mēs esam klaunu lomās, gan nezinu, ko viņš par domā, jo tas viss ir ļoti nopietni, ko mēs šeit darām. Un mums uzdevums ir jūs arī nedaudz izkustināt, lai jūs neaizmiegat, nenosalstat un spējat koncentrēties, jo, kā zinātnieki ir pierādījuši, ja kustās ķermenis, kustās arī smadzenes, tāpēc mēs izveiksim nelielu lomu spēli.
Jā, vienkārši lomu spēle un lomas būs sekojošas. Tad šis priekšējais gals, jūsu loma ir priekšējais gals. Jā, tātad aizmugurējais gals, jūsu loma ir aizmugurējais gals. Jā. Šis stūris, tā kā viss šis stūris, jūs esat labais gals, un šis stūris jūs būsiet kreisais gals. So front, back, right, left. Un tie, kas ir pa vidu, jūs būsiet pārējie. Ja? Tātad, nu tagad mēģināsim atpazīt, kurš ir kurš, tad kuri ir aizmugurējais gals. Vai jūs varat pamatcināt rokas? Jā, plus mīnus. Neviens negrib būt vidējais, jo vidusmāja ir. Tātad, labais gals. Jā, kreisais gals. Priekšējais gals. Un pārējie.
Ļoti daudz pārējie. Ok, katram vismaz ir divas lomas, tur priekšējais gals un labējie, tie visi vienādi. Ko mēs mēģināsim tagad izdarīt? Visi sinhronizēti tādu latviešu tradicionālo sporta veidu, kas ir ļoti tuvs hokejam, vilnīšu taisīšana, un pamēģināsim uztaisīt vilnīti no labās uz kreiso pusi. Tātad labā puse sagatavieties un uz 3 varam sākt. 1, 2, 3! Ok, bišķi tur tāds vilnīts. Ok, tagad no kreisās uz labo. Aiziet! Ļoti labi. Pamēģinām ātrāk no labās kreiso. Ideāli, un kreisās labo. Un sarežģītāk no priekšas uz aizmugurī. Brīnišķīgi. Un tagad pavisam sarežģīti, jo būs jāstās uz aizmugurī, no aizmuguris uz priekšu. Ok, lieliski. Bet īsti vilnītis nav vilnītis, ja tur nav klāts skaņas. Tāpēc meitenes pievieno, Lauma parāda, kādu skaņu pievieno meitenes. Un džeki pievieno, yeah! Lai panēs vilnīt vēlreiz ar skaņu. 1, 2, 3, no labās kreiso. Atpakaļ. No priekšu uz aizmugurī. Un aizmuguris uz priekšu. Ok, skaņi noslīga kaut kur pie pārējiem pilspāvu aizmugurī. Kā es te visi notiek? Ok, paldies jums par vilnīti. Un we are ready to welcome our next guest from European Youth Information and Counseling Agency, Evaldas Rupkus. Ar aplausiem sagaidām.
Sveiki, jaunatnes darbinieki! Well, you know that my name sounds quite Lithuanian, so yes, my roots are there. But I'm very pleased to be here because there are two things because of that. Because I'm totally in love with Latvian language. I was trying to learn that very hardly, but well, still never happened. I hope that it will sometime. And then the other thing that the Swiss Confederation is supporting this all, and after 1 year spending in Switzerland, I fell in love also with that country, which is, I must say, not that complicated as it was presented before. So I'm sure that my colleagues from the Swiss Youth Council will make it even easier, understandable. So, but now I'm representing European Youth Information and Counseling Agency, and would like to give you a question, and would like you to raise your hands who wants to answer that. So, who wants of you to be or to stay young? Okay, I see a lot of optimists here around. Well, not only optimists, but also people who like and take challenges as they are. Because when we start talking about youth information, and especially generalist youth information, then we really need to take into account the different challenges and different situations that young people encounter just in couple of years of their lives. So at the beginning, we start with whether to finish school, so we know that dropouts rates are quite high. Then choosing studies. Now we have very good opportunities to go and study abroad, or what to choose from all these different programs if to go to study. Another thing is, I'm not sure if you have that in Latvia and Lithuania, it's a very big problem that we have with young people, them getting loans and credits, so-called quick credits, and having really financial problems afterwards. Or in general, starting autonomous life, how to live with the money that your parents give and you're moving out of your hometown to live, how not to drink all the money only for beer and stuff like that. So it's really challenging time. Then going also to finding a job, how to present yourself, how to make it all happen, or even starting a business. And last but not least at all is understanding who you are, your identity, whatever it is, your personal and sexual and whatever, starting relationships, maybe starting a family or choosing whatever other cohabitation form you would like, starting the sexual life and encountering also some health problems that might happen or might raise out of this all. So you see how complex is this all, and how many things there are that young people need to get in a very short time. Normally it happens like in 2-3 years before finishing school and afterwards. So, well, most of you have been young, or you are still in that, and you know what it actually means. So my question is, who is taking care of that all? And there are 3 answers mainly that I want to give now, talking from the non-formal perspective, because the formal system is already set and it's already working, but then we have youth organizations, and I was checking on the statistics from 2013 on Latvian, and Eurobarometer shows that around 23% of young people in Latvia are participating in some kind of youth clubs, youth organizations, leisure time activities whatsoever. So, but what does it include? It includes mainly the high, top, elite young people who are active, who know what they want, and who know how and where. Then we go to the other part of young people, which I would say that it's open youth work or youth work that is professional youth work that is taking care of them mostly. So these are socially vulnerable youngsters, for example, those who are neither in education, unemployed, or nor in training. And then I see that we have quite a gap of people who are not socially vulnerable. They are also not participating, and they are not activists on social or political level. So what about them? What about this middle class, if we call it like that? Just those young people who are every day sitting in school, going afterwards at home, playing some computer games, meeting friends, and not really knowing what happens. And my answer to that is that it might be a youth information work, which is a form or a part of youth work. Let's leave this discussion for academics who are studying youth work in the academical literature. So the essential aim of youth information and counseling is to help guide young people in all aspects of their lives and in their autonomous decision making. So that's a very important principle that we are advocating when we talk about generalist youth information. So we build on the fact that it is not possible to make a sound decision without knowing one's options and alternatives. Now we are living in such vast time of internet, Google, whatever, so many opportunities, thousands of different volunteering programs, thousands of studying programs, whatsoever. And how to make a decision if you don't know the information, if you don't control that, and if you cannot evaluate what are the pluses and minuses. So we see this as a crucial task for generalist youth information and counseling. So before I go on, generalist and specialized. Specialized, for example, you could have tourism information point, you could have a job center, you could have a youth health center or whatever. Those who are specialists in a very specific topics. And when we talk about generalists, that's the concept that I want to present you. So the methods that we are using in our work are, of course, informing, networking, referring, signposting, orienting, advising, and counseling. So about these all we'll talk more in my workshop, but mainly the networking part is a very important one on which I would like to emphasize, because you will ask me, who is that Superman who knows it all, from A to Z, from job to health, from housing to studying abroad? Nobody. But that's why you need to establish a network with specialized partners, and you can refer young people to there. Our key values are being open to all young people, whatever the background, acting in the interest of young people, defining its options based on the needs of target groups. So you really need to know what are the needs in a very specific situation in your area where you are delivering the information services. And information must be practical, pluralistic, accurate, and regularly updated. Because you know that there is no such thing as objective information, so we take these criteria as the ones that can define and can help us reach that unreachable objectivity. All these principles are based in the European Youth Information Charter that has been adopted by 41 countries in Europe. And this is the document on which we are basing actually our work. And most of the youth information centers all over Europe, they are taking this charter as the starting point for their work. And organizations themselves must be must have the user-centered approach. So you really take the young person that comes to you. The holistic approach, so it's not the specific, but taking everything into account. And open to all young people without exception, without an appointment, so mainly how open youth centers are also working, and respecting confidence, anonymity, and providing maximum of choice. So we are not asking your name, your age, your data, whatsoever. You came with your question, we try to answer that, and that's it. Referring to specialized services, as I was already mentioning before. Here you can find the chart with the data from 2009. That was a survey made by from all European youth information centers, and you can see the variety of topics that we have here. So it starts from education and training, going through employment, leisure time, social problems, also having the opportunity just to access the internet in the youth information center, relationships, housing, and some of them are even giving the opportunity for pregnancy testing. So this is a huge variety and vast variety of, mainly that in all youth information centers it's covered, although you see that only 10% are taking care of the last one. So, and just a year ago, two Council of Europe youth researchers, Eva and Dunja, they have been working with those who have ever gained an answer or a service from youth information and counseling structures. And here we have the results from 14 European countries. Young people were asked to rate the access to information in everyday life. So you can see what the black and the right part is very easy to access. But for example, the topics as housing or even employment and violence, they are not so well covered. So this identifies for us and shows where we really need to put more focus, because young people are having difficulties in accessing that information. Then we asked those young people, and 53% said that when I read information in the internet, it is difficult for me to judge how correct it is. Of course, because if you Google, you can Google even a pregnancy test that you can do online just by making a selfie. So I even could do that too, and afterwards they have shown the father, although I don't know how possible is that, but and it was George Clooney or something like that. So I mean, of course it is a joke, but I doubt if any of your children or your friends or whatever, you would like them to go and find information on such sensitive topics there. So you really need a professional approach. Then we asked, since they have been the users of our services, then half of them said that half of the respondents were definitely agreeing that they are very satisfied with the information, youth information and counseling services provided. And what I think is very relevant to Latvian situation, since you are quite a centralized country, having a very big center, Riga, and then a lot of remote areas, that it seems that rural areas appear as an important areas where stronger impact can be expected from the youth information and counseling services. So this implies that we really can make a change if we work on that hard and if we put the emphasis in rural areas. But for that you also need to adapt your services, to do the mobile work, to do the street work and whatever. Options, how young people prefer receiving information, so they could choose two, and 73% said that they still prefer the face-to-face, although you would say that, well, you can Google everything, but it's not true, because you can Google a lot of things, and we as youth information workers, we use that also in our work, of course, but you will never find a final answer to your question, and you really need some advice and some guidance on using these mechanisms. Talking about the impact and benefits that can youth information counseling services can bring for young people, I said that of course we can focus on the middle class, but of course we do a lot of work also for those who are vulnerable and those who do not have access, do not know how to use internet, do not have computers at home or whatever. So it's our task to provide them with these skills and to work on the information literacy. So it was already identified during the Lithuanian presidency to the Council of European Union last year that youth information and counseling services are helping in transition, especially in this gray zone when you're finishing the school and actually you're not being tracked anymore because you're not in employment, you're not in university, so you might get lost, or you go for Norway and you work with a herring, yeah. So this is the point that exactly. We see ourselves as those helping in the transition period. Another thing I was mentioning, the networking, which might even end up with saving some costs, because there are already different actors working in with information services for citizens in general. So youth information, generalist youth information can help in getting them on board and meeting them and finding ways how they can even decrease their costs or be more efficient, let's say, in the work while cooperating. So this networking part is a very important one. And as I was mentioning, the digital literacy is uniquely provided by generalist youth information services. And this topic, guys, you really need to have a look at that because it is something that is coming up. UNESCO is taking it on the board now. Especially when now we are having a propaganda war with our eastern partners, then we even in Lithuania see youth information as a possible way how to educate young people to be more critical towards situations like that. And as let's call it the final station, but that the state might expect more aware and active young people who are critically assessing the information and taking responsibility of their decisions. This is, of course, the goal that we want young people to be and want to be responsible citizens. And all of that is being done by the Erika. It's not a lady, well, you can call it like that too, but it is the European Youth Information and Counseling Agency, which is an international non-governmental association. We are based in Luxembourg. And we are working at the moment in 27 European countries. and we have been established just 25 years ago. You can see the very first establishment photos with some 25 years back.
With young people.
And the main mission is, of course, we aim to develop, support, and promote quality generalist youth information. So on European level, and we're even now establishing a cooperation with the African countries. So this is something that is our main point of work. Then you can see the variety of membership, and it's a pity, but Latvia is still not on board. So I hope that next year we'll see on the list Latvians too. But mainly the variety of different organizations is quite clear, because we have even governmental agencies, we have also NGOs, we have associations, and so on and so forth. And we're working not only with the EU. EU is actually our, let's say, not the first priority, but Council of Europe is the one where we are focusing our work, because we are working also out of the EU reach in countries like Montenegro, Bosnia, Moldova, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, cooperating with European Youth Forum, European Youth Card Association, and Eurodesk. That's also working in Latvia. The thing that I really like about Erica, and I hope that you will use it well, is the training activities that we have. It is a methodological tools, and it is a system that we have created in the last 25 years, where we train youth information workers. And Erica is the only organization that can accreditate youth information workers. And only our prepared trainers can deliver these trainings. So the quality and the standards are very high. The system looks like that you have the intro course for every youth information worker, and then you have, after a year of working, you have the advanced intro course and the digital intro course for youth information workers. For those who are more working as youth workers, just in general, but they are interested in youth information too, we have another module that is called Jimmy, the Youth Information Mediator. So you can get the basic skills and you know how it works, but you don't call yourself youth information worker. And then the Webby workshop, we offer that for young people themselves, just to improve their skills on web. 23 million people. That was one of the years when, and that many young people we have reached out in one of our years through the network of 7,500, more than that, local and regional youth information centers all over the Europe. And there are more than 13,000 youth information workers working all over the Europe. So are you part of that? Are you part of these numbers? If you're still hesitating and if you would like to know more, I would like to invite you to join our workshop today afternoon, and we'll be talking about how to start that and how to be part of it. So thank you very much for your attention. I'm here Paldies, and I'm here around till Friday, so feel free to come to me and talk about youth information.
Thank you, Valdes, also for quite fancy, crazy presentation. Un mēs tomēr jūs aicinām neizmantot tās iepriekš taisītās selfie bildes, lai pārbaudītu jūsu grūtniecības taisību, savādāk mums varētu būt diezgan interesanti rezultāti konferencē. Jā, un tas, ar ko mēs turpinām, very important person coming from Association of Non-Formal Education of Lithuania, Nerijus Miginis.
Hello everyone, so I'm Nerijus from Lithuania, and professionally I'm doing youth worker training, professional training. So one of the paradigms according which we are training our youth workers is one theory, that if young people are sitting longer than 25 minutes, teeth are starting to grow in the bottom, so please stand up. We will do an energizer. Oh, very old people. Okay, so with your right hand, you have to do like this. Very important not to do like that. You do like this. And with the other right hand, or like in Latvia they call it the left hand, you make like that. And you put your left hand on the neighbor's right hand. On the neighbor's, not on yours, but on, I don't have a neighbor. It's different. Okay. So I will count to 3, and with number 3, you will have to do two things. So for girls it will be much more simple than for boys, but still possible. So with 3 you have to escape with the finger and catch the neighbor's finger, okay? 1, 2, 3. Okay, 1. Okay, get ready. So I remind you with number 3. 1, 2. Don't crash. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay. 1, 1.5. 2, 2.5. 3. Okay, to have equality, now we change hands. So right hand like this, the other right hand like that. Okay. 1, 2, 3. And the last time, 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much. So I'm very happy to have the privilege and to be able to present you the Lithuanian practice of youth worker training. So myself, I think something like 14 years ago, I went to a youth center because my mother was saying, listen, you have to go, you have to participate, be involved. Then at some point I started to work in the youth center. Then at some point I started to help other youth centers to open in Lithuania. And in 2008 we started to develop the youth work certification system in Lithuania and afterwards the training program. So I want to talk with you about 2 topics. So one about youth work in Europe and the variety of youth work and why it is very difficult to define and agree on what youth work is, and then a bit shortly present the Lithuanian model, and then afterwards invite you to the workshop to find out more what we are doing in Lithuania with youth workers. So why it is difficult to define youth work, or as I am joking, if you want to make youth policy charlatans from different countries to fight, let them define youth work. And there will be no agreement. Why? There is a publication which was published this year, working with young people, the value of youth work in EU. So you can read the overview, almost 300 pages. So you go, you Google, you enter the documents, and you'll have long review with the variety and practices which we have in European Union countries. So why it is difficult? Lucille was saying today that youth policy is not a policy defined by European Union, it is defined by each member state, as well like educational policy, cultural policy, so it is difficult to have a common agreement. Other aspects you have to take into consideration while developing and designing youth work system is that we have very different traditions and very different practices in Europe. So as well, some questions. I have 3 slides of questions to give you. I will not answer them, maybe give some examples in Europe, just to present you and give an overview and idea. So does youth policy equal to youth work? If you would read the Latvian law, yes. If you would read the Lithuanian law, no. If you would read laws of other countries, it might be different. Are all youth NGOs providing youth work services? In some cases, yes. In other cases, no. Some of the organizations are saying that main NGOs are providing. In Lithuania, we are planning and designing it in this way that municipalities should provide the youth work services. And does youth participation equal to youth work? So in my village, we say no, because youth initiatives, activities of youth organizations is youth participation, and youth work, as Evaldas was presenting, is more taking care of the middle of young people, the middle class, and as well young people with social issues. Should be a youth worker paid, or should he be a volunteer? In Lithuania we had a very long discussion and fight. Now it is said that he has to be paid as a professional, but there was an expectation that youth worker would do it voluntarily because it's civil society. But I'm always saying it is difficult to pay to feed your children from goodwill and volunteering. Who is providing this service? NGO, state, business, or church? Why church? Because historically the first youth center and first youth workers were coming from the church, and the first youth center was opened by Don Bosco and organization in the middle of the 19th century in Italy. And in Lithuania we got youth work practice coming from Germany and as well being implemented next to the church. What qualification should youth worker have? University degree or qualification gained through programs? So in Estonia they have a university degree, England they have a degree, in Norway they don't have a degree, in Germany they have a degree. In Lithuania we made a decision that we do not want yet to have a youth worker degree because we had quite a difficult situation with social workers. So there were new programs launched in the university, but then when they had to find work, they didn't. Now one of the biggest unemployed people groups whose education is social worker. So they have developed quite a lot of them. They have got the degrees, but there is not enough work for them to do. So you have to answer this question as well. How many youth workers you need? In Lithuania, we did the calculation that 600 youth workers for all country, for 3 million people would be enough. So should we start a university program or not? Is it possible to recognize competences a person already has? So if I am working for 15, for 10 years in a youth center, doing a good job, I am recognized by the municipality, I am seen as a good example, they are bringing foreign groups to my youth center to see how I'm working. Should I go for a training program? Yes or no? If youth work is a new function, service provided or reorganized from existing structures? Probably you still have hobby education in your country, yes. So in Lithuanian example, it was that during one night, hobby education was reorganized into non-formal education, which is basically content didn't change, just the name changed, and afterwards it created problems for at least 10 years, which we are still sorting it out. So you have to understand in your country how you are doing it, or reorganizing or creating something new. Where do you place youth work? In which policy domain? Sports, education, youth, or you try to integrate? In a lot of European countries, we have the example that there is a youth ministry together with the sport ministry. So mostly it becomes sports ministry, and as young people are doing sports, so probably everything is covered. In our case, with youth work, we decided to make it integrated, meaning that there is no policy domain responsible for youth work. If you are a youth worker, you can be a youth worker in a police youth center, you can be a youth worker working in a library, in a cultural center, and so on, etc. So we made it as liberal as possible for everyone to do youth work, but new changes came up. Probably an example is if you are a youth worker under the educational system, you are earning 1.5 times more than if you are a youth worker in a cultural institution. And you'll have additional benefits as the educational system has a better developed system. So last three aspects, who is paying for youth work services? State, municipality, business, or service users, the young people themselves. In Lithuania we have examples of private youth centers where very rich people, businessmen, are funding huge youth centers, and they're working very successfully in local realities. In Lithuania, now the state is co-funding youth work, but in the future the vision is that it will be a municipal function and that the municipality will provide the amount. So now, to tell in numbers, in Lithuania the budget of one youth center is 15,000 euro per year, the average budget. So it's a quite cheap thing to sustain, to open up and maintain a youth center. So what aims do we set for youth work? Leisure time activities, education, teenage pregnancies, helping to solve social issues. Why these examples? It's an example from England, because 10 years ago youth work was involved in doing literacy work, basically training immigrant youth how to read. 5 years ago they were focusing on teenage pregnancies, and still now. And now in Europe we have the topic of youth unemployment, which is very important because we have 2 times more unemployed youth than we have adults. So, and my prognosis would be that in 5 years all youth work in Europe will work with health issues, because the health situation of young people is getting worse and worse. So in other words, basically youth work is always the stepdaughter who has to take care of with what the educational system didn't manage to work or to solve. So there is a problem and youth work is going to try to solve it. And other aspects. So again, from the review document, you see the structure here. So they reviewed what is youth work in Europe, what are the practices, what are the aims, where the youth work should lead to what personal development, empowerment, autonomy. So basically, to sum up in one word, youth work and youth policy as well are helping for the child to become an adult, are helping in the transition process from being a youngster to becoming an adult And what does it mean to be an adult? So an adult differs from a child that he is responsible and is able to solve his own problems and solve his issues. And how we do it, very often we use non-formal methods, group methods, and sometimes individual work with young people. So to try to define that, we'll use the Lithuanian definition of what youth work is in Lithuania. So it is educational activity directed at young people or their groups during their leisure time activities based on their needs, aiming to create conditions for integration of youth into life of society and empower them to create their personal life, consciously and actively participate in life of the society. And youth work supplements education and family education. I would stress on the words leisure time, because leisure time, that's the distinction of the youth as a social group. Because in the middle of the 19th century, the youth as a social group appeared when everyone started to go to school, so they were not children anymore. They had some additional responsibilities, but they were not adults yet. So when school was ending, they had some time without their parents at home or somewhere. So at that moment, the leisure time activities appeared. So if you would look at research in Lithuania, what are the main problems of young people that are free? So all those three problems would be solved if you would make a kebab kiosk working 24 hours, because they can go and buy food whenever they want. If you open a big shopping mall where you can go to cinema, ice skating rink, play bowling, do other stuff, they don't have money, but still they want to have leisure time activities. And third one, the most important one, disco. If you would have disco, majority of your problems would be solved. So that's according to the young people. But as other presenters were saying, as researchers showing, there are other issues about which young people are not really understanding yet. They're not able to speak up and advocate for themselves. So who is a youth worker in Lithuania? An adult working with youth at leisure time, aiming for personal and social development of a young person through individual work with young people and groups, and having needed competences. So if you want to find out which 30 competences youth worker has to have in Lithuania, come to my workshop. I will show you the huge self-evaluation document with the 30 competences, amazing competences, and you can find out about it. So let's continue. So who is a qualified youth worker? And for this slide, in Lithuania, I got lots of very, very hot discussions. Because in Lithuania, we recommend that the youth worker would be between the age of 21 and 45. A bit exclusive, yes? But the logic behind it, so we borrowed, we were not the ones who created it. In Germany, they have a very similar example. So 21 age is the lower gap. Why? Because younger people are not able to have professional distance between themselves and the young people with whom they are working. And they are not really still having enough life experience to be able to do quality youth work and solve social issues. And when you are 45, very often you are not able to remember yourself what you were doing and how you were doing when you were 15. So there is this rule which we are proposing, that if you are 2 times older than your target group, it might be difficult to understand what the young people and how the young people are doing. It is only a recommendation. We have very good examples, exceptions, which we can call professional young people who are still 60 and being able to work and do, and nobody can forbid them. It is only a recommendation. An example why, so imagine if you are an adult working with young people, a 15-year-old in a youth center is coming and saying, you know, I broke up with my first boyfriend or girlfriend. And the worst thing what the youth worker can do, it will pass, you'll have lots of them. So it is already difficult for you to understand what the young person is feeling, but you already are starting to give proposals, solutions, behaving not like a youth worker should. So you have to have 5 years working experience if you don't have a university degree, or 3 years of working experience with a university degree, and each competence of the 30, you should have at least 60% of the competence to be able to approach young people and work. And the interesting thing, because we do competence self-evaluation before the training programs and after, so very often after the training program, the competences are lower. Why? Because people start to understand what is behind the competence. And they are starting much more adequately evaluating themselves and knowing what do they have it or do they not. So how the process looks like. So you have the crazy guy who is working with young people. He's filling online the application form. Then the application form is sent by post to the agency, and then we have the crazy people's meeting to inform and to know what the process will be afterwards. Next step is to measure who has how much competence, what are the strengths, and after the measurement, the commission of youth workers and institutions working with youth municipalities are making the decision, do you have the competences or not? And then at the end there are two proposals. So one proposal, you get immediately the diploma of the youth worker, and we have 70 youth workers whose competences gained in a non-formal way were recognized. And another thing, we have something like 230 youth workers who passed through the training program to become a youth worker. Please press one more time the button to training program. Next slide. So how the training... So this safe path here, if you are 21 years old, if you are 18 years old and you want to become a youth worker, so you enter this process, basically you are not still having the competences, but you still go through the evaluation, and then you immediately go through all the training modules which we have. There are 5-6 modules depending on the process, and after each training course there is 40 hours practice plus the evaluation of the competence. So in a safe way you gather all the modules, you gather all the competences, and at the end you get the youth worker certificate. So example of a model. So you have 4 or 5 training days plus 40 hours of practice depending on the topic. So if it's, for example, individual work with young people, so you have 40 hours of consultations. You write as well a paperwork according to the homework which we were giving after the module, and then evaluation is being done and you get a plus from the pluses you need. So what are the 6 modules which we are doing in Lithuania? So module number 1, youth work context and personal development as a youth work. So to know what is youth policy, who is a young person, who is working with young people. Second one, youth age psychology. So to know what is driving the young people psychologically, what is teenage psychology, what are the interests, the topics the young people want to work. Number 3, individual youth work, and I would stress upon this module because in our countries we are able to learn to work and organize learning process of groups, because very often we are doing that in classes, in camps, and so on, etc. But working individually, that's very often a difficult thing for us. So working with groups and difficult behavior, different methods in youth work, and the last one, organization and project management, because youth worker has to be able to fill an application and get grant for this work. So my last slide about Lithuania, so what we are planning to do next. So now we have 2 examples of detached youth work, so meaning organizations who are working with young people on the street and not trying to get them into the youth center. So all the activities and meetings are done in the street, because not all young people can be brought inside, and with some people, young people, you have to work outside. So we are developing now this branch, and beginning of next year we will do a training course in Lithuania on detached youth work, and we have 6 places for Latvian participants. So if you want to find out how to work with young people on the street, please approach me, because our colleagues from England and Norway will be sharing their examples in Lithuania. Working with specific target group, not in education, employment, and training. So in Lithuania, the next step of youth center development will continue with developing youth centers who are able to work with this specific target group. And mobile youth work, so working in rural areas where the young people are. Because in Lithuania, mobility is a big problem in rural areas. Why? Because buses are not existing, and leisure time activities are finishing at 2 o'clock, when we say the yellow bus is leaving from the school and bringing back the children to the village. But when we were in Georgia, we saw that there are examples of mobile work. For example, banks are coming with a minibus to each village, and there is ATM machine where you can take out your cash. Or for example, the priest is taking the car and going to 5 churches in which he's working. So maybe the youth worker as well can take a car and one day work in one village, another day work in another village, the third day work in a third village as an option. and other forms. As Evaldas was telling about informational work in Lithuania, now we are promoting and heavily working into that direction. So, one more advertisement. I have a book, a manual, which we are using to train youth workers in Lithuanian, and it's in English language. So if you will attend my workshop, you will get the printed, the hard copy. The most active participant will get it, and for all others, it will be in the common folder of the conference. So 150 pages, half of it theory for youth workers, and half of it of methods. So thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Marius, also for doing your job as energizers. Yeah, you're going to talk about this after. It's not normal. Okay, as the next talker, we will invite Nicole Cornu from National Youth Council of Switzerland to talk about NGO's role in youth work. Applause for Nicole.
Thanks a lot. I apologize for the 1 hour delay that we already have. I imagine that you are hungry, but I hope that you still can dedicate some attention for the following presentations that we now have. And I excuse that I couldn't learn some Latvian. I was impressed by my colleagues before me, but I only got to know that I will be here since yesterday noon. So I hope you apologize. Feel welcomed with a grüezi in Swiss German. So I will speak about the role of youth associations as NGOs in the development of youth work. And from my experience, I have a scout-like background, and I was also in student unions engaged, and for 4 years I was the co-president of the Swiss National Youth Council. So, the next slide, if you could start to show this. We heard that Switzerland is a very complicated country. I tried to make it very simple, making an economy between Switzerland and EU. Of course, it's not as I presented it here, but I hope that I can use it as a tool just to show you the differences between the reality in the EU and the youth policy reality in Switzerland, which is different as we are not a member country of the European Union. So Switzerland, as we are not a member country of the European Union, we focus more on the Council of Europe and the youth issues that are discussed within the Council. And I hope that I can prove you that Switzerland is not so complicated to understand. So the main difference is that the vast majority of the EU countries were much heavily hit by the economic crisis than Switzerland so far is. So we still believe us to be a little bit an island in Europe, a safe haven. The situation is a bit different because the economy is still going quite well. The topic now in the European Union of unemployment, increased unemployment, and especially dramatic youth unemployment, it's not a topic at all, I would say, in Switzerland, because we have a general unemployment rate of 3%, which is statistically full employment, and a youth unemployment rate of 3.5%. So it's not also much higher than the general unemployment rate. As we are not part of the EU, we don't also have these tools like structural dialogue, like youth guarantee. The EU youth strategy that Lucille mentioned is not applying to us. There is a spelling mistake, but it's quite talking because we have no formalized dialogue. We only have Swiss-specific laws and procedures. What my colleague Vera already mentioned, as we are a direct democratic system, people can come with ideas and launch a national referendum. So it happens that things pass through on our national level, which in any other country in Europe would never ever be tolerated. Like the ban of minarets, for example, or the expulsion of migrants. So as a consequence of one of the national votes we had, we were kicked out from the EU, from the Erasmus Plus program, which is quite a difficulty for youth work in Switzerland, who is also happening, of course, in the international level. We are in the part of Europe, so we would also like to have mobility and exchange, etc. and the government had to jump in with a temporary solution, as it was mentioned. So we can participate in some way, but not in all the actions. And it's still now in the process of being resolved, the situation, and I sincerely hope that we can come back to the European family and be part of Erasmus Plus again very soon. So, European Union tries to promote very much this free mobility, which in Switzerland we don't want, because as the general living standard is higher than in the rest of the EU, there is a big fear among apparently a majority of my co-citizens that we get flooded by foreigners. And so we can see on the political level increasing tendencies of isolation and protectionism. So the topics are different because of this economic situation that I already mentioned. Employability, very big issue in the EU, and also this making accessible of rural areas, include rural youth, is also not so much a topic in Switzerland due to this, so to say, inexistent youth unemployment. And to the good infrastructure we have. I'm coming from a village with 560 inhabitants, and on weekends, if I want to go out, I still have a bus who brings me back at 3 o'clock in the morning to my village. So, our topics are more, as my colleague before mentioned, he said health will be the big issue. That's also already a big topic in Switzerland. So the Swiss youth policy mainly focuses on prevention of youth violence. Honestly, youth violence is no problem in Switzerland. But there is a political will to create it like a problem, and therefore a lot of money is going into programs of violence prevention. It's not exactly what the Youth Council is advocating for. Which is for us a much more important topic, is the integration of young people with a migrant background, and also due to the violent conflicts we have all over the world, we have more and more asylum seekers, and among them are also young asylum seekers, minors who come to Switzerland without parents. And so those we are also trying to inform about their rights, to include them in activities. So that's one of the, I would say, main target groups that we like to tackle. And yeah, also due to the economic and financial situation, for many of the countries there is almost no budget or very low budget for youth work on the national level, so they have to address to the EU to get funds. In Switzerland, it's the contrary. We have a lot of money for youth work, which is often not even used. So the budget is not used in the end of the year. There is still money left because not enough youth organizations were applying for. And so for us, these EU funds, it's so complicated and bureaucratic and, European, we are a bit afraid. So, no, better not touch them. It often happens that you go to a Youth in Action project and you will not find someone from Switzerland because they just prefer to travel there by themselves. They have enough money. They are not in need for going to these subsidized projects, which is really sad because the importance of these programs are underrating, but we are spoiled by our wealth. Next slide. The youth policy, as my colleague Vera already mentioned it, is mainly developed by the cantons. So she explained this federal structure of our state, but it is not the case that only the cantons have a youth policy. There is a national framework for these cantonal youth policies. The national framework consists of these 3 pillars that she also already mentioned. As we said in the pillar of the protection, it's mainly the prevention of violence and abuse of children and young people. Then in the promotion column, it's this empowerment aspect, training, information, and on the participation column, it's mainly the topic of getting young people active to promote this citizenship. Yes. Also, which for me is quite telling,
is that in the past, the ministry in charge for youth policy in Switzerland was the Ministry for Culture. So youth work was seen like a cultural task. Nowadays, it's included in the Ministry for Social Insurances, which perhaps is better from a cross-sectoral aspect, but it also expresses very much the paradigm shift to see youth not as positive agents of change, but as a problem that we have to invest in for not creating more problems. So youth work is seen, and that was also what Nereus mentioned, youth work should solve all the problems in society, and we want to invest in some trainings that young people can develop their capacities so that they will be self-sustainable and not end up in the social security system. That's why it is now in the Ministry for Social Insurances. The youth work in Switzerland, and that is what Evaldas also showed with his presentation, has also different forms. They are the professional youth workers, the one who went to a kind of pedagogical university. They are employed, they are paid for their work, and they are mainly working in clubs, youth clubs in schools. Their offers that they offer to young people, characteristically, they are not membership-based. That's also why it is called open youth work. And that's also, now I made it a bit simple to stress the difference. It focuses more on problematic youth because they are more likely to go to a youth center where they don't have to go regularly, but just once in a month or however when the offer looks attractive to them. And not like the youth associations that are membership-based. By statistics, even if they want to have a more diverse membership, it's still the case that they mainly address to middle-class youth, at least in Switzerland, but I think it's also in other European countries the case. And in these youth associations, that's the typical career path that you know. You start as a child, then you become a group leader, then you become a unit leader, then you enter the board, then you go to the national board, etc., etc. So these are voluntary youth leaders. In general, they are unpaid. They just do it by their pure dedication for the work. In Switzerland, there are two umbrella organizations, one for type A, so for these paid youth workers, which is this umbrella organization of open youth work, and then one umbrella organization for these voluntary youth leaders, which is the National Youth Council, the umbrella organization of youth associations in Switzerland. And those two umbrella organizations, of course there are plenty of youth organizations in Switzerland, but most of them, they are member either of A or of B, and from the government in all the reports, laws, etc., it's those two umbrella organizations that are seen like major stakeholders in the youth policy development. So they are regularly invited for consultation, they provide expertise, etc. And they also get structural financial support, because a lot of smaller youth organizations, they only get funding if they apply with a project, but they don't get structural funds for their regular activities. So those two big umbrella organizations, they get this structural support. There are other big youth organizations like the Scouts or the YMCA, Red Cross, they also get this structural support. So to achieve goals to improve youth policy in Switzerland, it's very important, and this also Nereus, I think, talked about, is cooperation, so that you get together and that you try to achieve common goals, that you unite common interests and that you try to defend them with power in front of politicians in parliament, but also in front of bureaucrats in the state administration. So it's made mainly through these umbrella organizations, but then they also formed like a coalition together, these two big umbrella organizations together with other big youth associations, So if it is really an important topic in Switzerland, like the revision of the national youth law, then they speak up in the name of this coalition. And it's a lot of youth organizations then represented, and they are taken serious because they have a significant power. Not to forget is that a lot of parliamentarians and also a lot of bureaucrats in state administration, they have a youth association background. So it would be a bit stupid not to use this resource. So often it's very personal contact, networking, which is important, etc. And those are people who know the reality from the youth organizations on the ground. So it's very important to take care of having good relationships, working closely together. The biggest advocacy projects we had in Switzerland that we achieved as youth NGOs is that we made it happen in 2006 that in the national constitution there was a youth promotion article included, which says that the state has a responsibility to invest in youth and to support the development of capacities of young people, etc. Then that's this youth law that I mentioned that was still from 1989, so it was an old law focusing mainly on youth associations. That's also what has been said. That's not the reality anymore, that most young people are part of a membership-based organizations. So this law had to be revised to face more these realities of nowadays. And so also youth clubs, youth centers, they are now much more important in this new youth law. Then, what I think is interesting to mention, we also made it pass through. Of course, you always need political support for that because we are NGOs, so we are not in parliament, but we try to set up a support structure to pass that through. We made it happen that for young people under the age of 30, if they are engaged in a youth organization, they have the right, by law, to ask for 5 additional days free from their employers so that they can go to their camps, that they can lead their activities. And I think that was a big success for the recognition of volunteering in Switzerland and for the good work that youth workers are doing. The upcoming topic in Switzerland is, as Vera explained, we are a very federal system. The main responsibility for youth policy is on the cantonal level. So often the cantons, one canton has a youth policy, another canton doesn't have a youth policy, one has a good one, another one has a bad one. So we, of course, from the National Youth Council, we would like to have that harmonized. And the main argument is that there should be an equality of chances, that it cannot be that a youngster doesn't have the same chances if he is born in Canton E or in Canton B. So we want to have this harmonized. Now our system says that the state cannot impose because it's the responsibility of the cantons. They say by constitution we cannot interfere in the cantonal competencies. So we said, okay, then let's change the constitution. If it's not possible by constitution, then we go for a project for changing the constitution. So we found a member in parliament who is a good advocate for youth rights in Switzerland, and she entered this project. So we will have a votation in parliament on this new constitutional article, and then of course it will also be a public votation to pass it through. So we are hoping that this will see the place and there will be more harmonization in the youth work system. Next slide. That's the last slide. And I wanted to show you that I think it's the case for any country, but youth work, youth policy is settled on different levels. So we have the international level, where youth NGOs try to participate in report writing, convention drafting, etc. And as an example of a project, we have the UN youth representatives. As far as I know, Latvia doesn't have UN representatives. In Switzerland, we have 3 of them. They are elected for 2 years. The idea of a youth representative is that when the UN conferences are happening, with the Swiss diplomatic delegation, there are not only the adults going, but there are 3 youth representatives part as official members of the diplomatic delegation, and on all the conventions where youth is hit, or the impact does also target on youth, that they are there in these discussions and they are a full diplomatic member. So in Switzerland they have a lot of rights. Of course then they can also not express so freely as perhaps in other countries, but they have much more power than only representative members who are more there for decoration to show that government include young people. But I think it's an interesting project to lobby for. Then on the national level, there is this participation in law processes. That's this typical advocacy work that we are doing. Of course, in Switzerland, it's a bit particular because we have this direct democracy system. So we are not only electing our representatives in parliament every 4 years, but we vote on precise questions around 4 times a year. So direct democracy is quite demanding. It's quite stressful to always inform yourself about the votations, but it's a great opportunity you have to make your ideas passing through. And for example, the student union, they collected enough signatures to make a national referendum happen on the harmonization of scholarships, because it was the same problem like I mentioned before. Depending on which canton you came from, you have the right to a lot of scholarships or almost no scholarships. And they say, for the principle of equality of chances, that should be harmonized, and we will vote on this on the national level. So this is a youth NGO who actually came up with a law project. Then on the cantonal level, we have projects like also Vera mentioned, like the cantonal youth parliaments, or this Easy Vote brochure who explains the complex political realities in a youth-adapted, more easy language. And on the local level, we also have the possibility to get funding, to get support from the communities for the implementation of concrete projects, be it a youth action day in your community, or a project I like, because of the title, it's Political Candlelight Dinner. It's actually an informal exchange where young people meet with their representatives from the community, with the politicians, but on a candlelight dinner, and they can speak about different topics. It's for this networking aspect especially. So these are different project ideas. We will run the workshop this afternoon, so if you want to explore these projects further, we can speak about it with you. I would also be very interested to know what Latvia has to offer or where the need is really urgent. So perhaps we can exchange and inspire each other. I warmly thank you for the attention, and
Thank you, Nicole. Ātras uzmanības tests, vai jūs vēl esat pie dzīvības, pats laba roku. Un kur ir labā, jā, saprotam, kur ir labā roka. Un izdaram to, ko es jums teikšu. Jā, tikai to, ko es saku. Ātri pieliekam labo roku pie pieres. Jā, višķīt vēl kaut kur tomēr vēl esam, jā, tā kā ar mums kopā. Ok, and mums vēl ir 3 prezentācijas, 3 runātāji un viens runātājs, un I invite Maria Lee on the stage. Please applause for her and Kaļā.
Labdien, I hope I said it correctly. Hello everybody. My name is Maria Liv, and I'm here as a representative of the Association of Estonian Open Youth Centers. Estonian population is only 1.3 million people, and for the first time in history, our target group, which is in the age range from 7 to 26, is below 300,000 people. Our first Youth Work Act was adopted in our parliament in 1999, and the new law has been in use since 2010. By that, for the first time in the history of Estonian youth policy, local youth councils and their rights, as well as the national youth councils, are defined by law. And young people were given the right to have a say in the decisions of their home regions. Shortly, the law defines that youth work creates conditions for development of the youth outside formal education, families, and work. It has taken a lot of time to prove the general audience and to municipalities the necessity of youth work as such. It has seemed that we are swimming in the opposite direction. But now the society in Estonia has come to realize that the main task of youth work is to support the development of social skills. So although the modern day youth work is considered a teenager, only 15 years old, it has now become clear that youth work helps in the development of shaping complete members of society. And compared to the beginning, 15 years ago, there is now more dialogue in the field. There are a lot of different underlying documents setting grounds and forming guidelines for nationwide youth work. I will bring out one, which at the moment is the most important one, and this is the Youth Work Development Strategy. This also gives guidelines for my work every day. Why is it so exceptional? For the first time, this was put together by collecting input from youth workers at local level. And here you can see the 5 top areas for co-responsibility between organizations. There are several nationwide youth work organizations which ensure the availability of diverse and high-quality youth work services throughout Estonia. Some worth mentioning, probably the most important governmental organization, which is the Estonian Youth Work Centre, and which was founded in 1999, and is actually the only national Centre for Youth Work under the administrative authority of the Ministry of Education and Research. Its main objective is to develop and organize youth work in the framework of our national youth policy. Some others worth mentioning: Estonian National Youth Council, which is the umbrella organization and unites youth organizations and youth councils, and the Estonian Union of Youth Workers, which unites all the youth workers around Estonia, and of course Erasmus Plus, which works under Youth in Action organization. I'm here as the representative of the biggest non-governmental organization, Association of Estonian Open Youth Centers. There are 240 youth centers in Estonia at the moment, and the organization unites 120 of them. So the aim of the association is basically to create a network and support each youth center's actions. Some of the work fields shortly. So we support the development of new youth centers. We work as the umbrella organization. We organize similar seminars and training courses. Most importantly, we conduct and coordinate international projects, and we are an equal partner in forming youth policy at national and local level. Here are just some of the projects that the organization is responsible for. Probably some of the things worth mentioning. The most important project at the moment is for children at risk from age 7 to 26. And 86 youth centers all around Estonia are being part of that. And it is funded by Norwegian support programs. We create special means and measures like new hobby clubs, seasonal camps, and cooperation between institutions. And maybe the other thing worth mentioning, and what is the most recent project, is Logbook. Actually, 22 youth centers in Estonia are currently testing the system. It is an internet-based evaluation and analyzing system, and gives a good opportunity to analyze data about participation, gender, age groups, etc. At youth centers. So my official title is a youth worker. There are about 6,000 youth workers in Estonia, only one for 1.3 million people, with 600 of them working at open youth centers. They're part-time, voluntary, occupational, professional, full-time youth workers all around Estonia. More and more people want to study this at a university too, to obtain a professional degree. And it has been possible since 1992 in several universities. Similarly to Lithuanian experience, we are giving out the youth work qualification, and it has been possible to apply for it since 2010. So, in addition to open youth centers, there are several other institutions carrying out youth work principles, such as regional and local juvenile committees, youth councils, youth committees, information and counseling centers, which are governmental organizations. And it is considered now that also church, the police, schools and municipalities as such are carrying out youth work in some cases nationwide. I'm working in one of the oldest and biggest youth centers in Estonia, and for creating contact and youth participation, we create an open space daily by providing them with pool, Xbox, etc. We support youth initiatives through different projects and also promote voluntary work. And we carry out mobile work on the street and on the mobile youth work on the streets and on the internet. Through different programs, we do preventive work. We help youth enter labour market through our work camps. We cooperate with schools, the local police and municipality officials every month in a special network. We organise hobby groups, seasonal camps each season, different trainings, and of course give the youth the possibility to participate in an international youth project. And also, of course, we support the work of the Youth Council. To sum up, Youth Centre now in Estonia can be seen as a so-called social airbag, where a youngster can experience a sense of belonging in a safe environment, in spite of his or her social background, education, and so on. Youth work has the potential to solve social problems, and also social problems in the community and in the society, and can sort of give a young person a jump start to an independent life. I'm very happy that our government has already become to realize that as well. And although Estonia can be taken as an example, because we have now reached to the point where our work is recognized, and we can now focus on the work itself rather than constantly prove our existence, it is important to acknowledge that learning from other countries' experience and improving nationwide system will take us even further. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Paldies. Yeah, we're going to continue with last remaining speakers after lunch. Ja, tad mēs turpināsim pēc pusdienām.
Bet pirms tam mazs citāts no Vinnija Pūka. Un Vinnijas Pūks reiz ir teicis: dažreiz ir arī jauki runāt ar kādu, kurš nelieto garus un sarežģītus vārdus, bet drīzāk īstus un vienkāršus, kā piemēram, kā būtu ar pusdienām.
Kā būtu ar pusdienām? Ok, pagaidiet, vēl apsēdieties 1 minūti. 2 svarīgas lietas. Mēs atgriežamies šeit visi kopā zālē 15:30, tātad 3:30, lai turpinātu strādāt. Otra svarīgā lieta, tie, kas ir paņēmuši austiņas un tulkošanas tās ierīcītes, tās vajadzētu atgriezt kastē pie izejas.
Un trešā svarīgā lieta bez ēšanas ir arī fotostūrītes, resursi un cilvēki.
Viteris.
Labu apetīti!
Labu apetīti!